Tuesday, everyone. It's your host, DMase. On Willy and Derek and Willy, Mason, Willy, Mason, Donick, whatever you want to call us. We are here today, and we got a bunch of things lined up for you. A bunch of stuff to talk about, getting some Titan stuff, as we usually do, some Predator stuff. And then we're going to kick it around and talk about some NFL stuff. We got Tim on again, as we usually do around this time of the week on Tuesday. So we have Tim on. We have Alex Carrier today.
We do. Alex Carrier, who decided to re-up with the Nashville Predators, is going to join us at 1 o'clock. So we've got some really good stuff. Tim Hasselbeck, all football with, and Alex Carrier is a great talker and interviewer. Can't wait to hear what he has to say about that whole process. Up that he would probably have the choice to take a little less and stay where he knows where he fits. He knows the coach. He knows the defensive partner he's going to have, who's a very close friend of his, or he could hit the market and probably get more money, but be in a little bit of an unknown situation. What is better? I think it's a great philosophical question to kick around. DMase, you were kind of left no choice at one point in your career where you were cut, so you knew you had to go somewhere else. But I think it's something that a lot of players face, and sometimes I ask the question: is it worth a certain price to stay where you know you fit, even if you're making a little less? Do you make it on the back end by taking a little less because it maybe lengthens your career? I see it with a lot of wide receivers. Yeah, Drew Bennett is maybe a good example. He got good money. Corey Davis is a more recent example of Titans who they hit the free agency. They got a big raise in pay, but their production was never quite the same because they didn't fit in the same role. It's hard to always recreate the role. I guess we'll find out with Calvin Ridley and
Tyler
Boyd this year. Yeah.
And Pollard.
Yeah.
Sneed, even though that was
now some of those guys maybe didn't have a choice to stay. I don't know, but I think there are times where you could choose to stay and take less, or you can get more, but you're going into the unknown. And Carrier is a great example. We'll talk to him about that process. He's very engaging to talk to. We'll also find out if anybody got him confused with UC Soros because they both signed new deals. If people congratulated Carrier, but they were thinking it was Juice, he always has funny stories about that because that happens to both of them.
I'm sure
they look kind of alike.
I'm sure he'd take Juice's money.
It's about double.
Exactly.
You can ask him that. He'll see. He'll probably have a funny answer.
According to Nick Keyser, he said Alex Carrier is in the process of getting married. So
yes, and I think Lausanne, is that right, Nick? I think they're both getting married, right? They're obviously very close friends. Their wives are close friends. They had a hilarious Halloween costume.
Different times, by the way.
Okay.
Nick Keyser's got all the insight.
He's got all the insight.
Nick got all the tea, man. Keeping his ear to the ground, huh?
The reporter he does the hustling, man.
Yeah.
He's in the locker room. He's talking to the guys. There was a funny picture of those guys. They went all out into the French, the berets that the French wear. They wore like matching costumes. The wives wore matching to the Halloween party. It was hysterical. So those two are inseparable, really.
Okay,
so that would have been the weird thing is you would have been leaving your guy, right? Your defense partner, close friend, Jeremy Lausanne. The chemistry on the ice between them, they fit together very well. So that was something I'm sure he weighed.
Yeah, you had to. The grass, as they say, the grass isn't always green on the other side. But you don't know until you test, until you test it out, until you see. And in this situation, he didn't want to see how green the grass possibly was on the other side.
And he waited to the last minute because it didn't get done until, we didn't even hear about it until the day of free agency.
Exactly.
You were hearing behind the scenes, they were working on it. That was going to get done. So he must have thought about it for a while.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. Any player in that situation, there are a lot of things you got to weigh. And I'm sure, playing here for a considerable amount of time, being, having your line partner, Lazan, and then not only is he your line partner, but he's one of your good friends, outside of the rink. All those things you take into account when you're thinking about possibly re-signing with the team or moving on. And I'm sure his family, had some say in it, whether he goes or not. But sometimes, just because your family wants you to stay, you may not be able to stay. But the Predators wanted him here, and he wanted to be here. You don't know how much he might have left on the table had he left and went somewhere else. But that's something you can't think about. This once you signed the contract, you signed it. You can't think about it. Now you just got to move on and continue to get better at your craft. And I'm sure those are the things that he weighed in his decision to stay here, as opposed to trying to test the free agent market.
The other thing that I'm curious your perspective on,
Mhm.
this is something else we got into. And I think L'Jarius Sneed, of course, he got traded. This was a situation that came to a head because the Chiefs, in the salary cap situation they decided this is the move they have to make. They
Mhm.
probably could have kept him, but it would have forced them into other financial decisions they didn't want to have. So he's making a lot of money now. There's a lot of examples of this, but is expected of him. And sometimes that can be a spotlight that's tough on a player, right? We've talked about that with Sneed. If it came up yesterday when you were saying, he's the guy that they can't lose. If he plays 17 games, it's going to make a big difference. But he's going to be under the microscope probably more so than ever before because he's making more money. There's a lot of other examples in sports, but when you sign that, when you're the new guy and you're being paid really well, so much is expected. And if you're not living up to that, you have to deal with that noise that's coming.
Yeah, you're gonna have to. There's, when you talk about certain things when you enter into the professional leagues, and the young lady Tarasi said, long ago when Caitlin and those girls were coming out, hey, listen, there are levels to this. It's true. It's the same, with hockey and football or whatnot. There are levels to this. And I bring that up because a guy like Lazan, when you're not making the top dollar, they expect you to go out there and play and give it your all. But there's a level of expectation that comes with the dollar amount that you're being paid.
Yeah, people aren't going to say, well, that
Exactly.
guy's really overpaid. I don't know what the deal is with those guys.
Exactly. So, and when you get into a situation, like Lazan, do you even want to go? And maybe this is sort of an oxymoron, in a sense, because you never think of not an NFL player, but just a professional athlete not wanting to go and get the max dollar somewhere, and also not just getting the max dollar, but welcoming the pressure that comes with it. It's sort of an oxymoron to say, well, guys don't want to do that. Guys don't want to leave and get paid more, and then comes the extra added pressure. That's what professional athletes are supposed to be, right? They're supposed to want that pressure. They're supposed to want to be able to shine through the pressure that is being put on you. But some guys aren't like that. Some guys would rather just be in the background. Some guys would rather be the highest paid player, but not have all the responsibilities of the highest paid player because they don't know how to react when that pressure's on them. Other players love it. They want the pressure. That helps them thrive. And, maybe Lazan, Carrier.
Well, Carrier, and down the road, Lazan
it's going to be Lazan too.
He's going to have that same
Exactly.
kind of
So
decision.
Are they the type of players? I'm sure they are, but are they the type of players that would rather just, go out there and just play their game? Don't worry about anything else. Don't want that added pressure. Just go out there because they feel they play better at that, at that level. Or, are they the guys that want to go out, get the max contracts, or welcome the pressure?
The other part of it is on a salary cap team, especially a strict salary cap like the NHL is,
Mhm.
unlike the NFL and to an extent the NBA, where you have a little bit of wiggle room, you
Mhm.
can make it. But if you take less, you can also rationalize it by saying, I'm giving my team a chance to win. I think UC
Yeah.
Saros did it by taking 7.74. He probably could have waited it out,
Mhm.
played it all the way to the end of next year. Maybe he would have gotten traded as a result, but he could have walked up to free agency and probably made more
Mhm.
by hitting it. But I think he wanted to stay. He was willing to take a little less
Mhm.
with the idea that it gives my team a chance to have more resources to
Mhm.
fill out the rest of a winning roster. You can rationalize it that way too.
Yeah.
Because I think Alex Carrier realistically
Mhm.
is he's probably, and I will throw Lausanne in there too.
Mhm.
Are they an ideal second pair on a championship team? Probably not.
Mhm.
They're somewhere between a good second pair and a great third pair.
Mhm.
So if that allows your third pair to be great, or eventually maybe they slide down and are a great third pair, and there's another two guys that somewhere down the road they get, Brady Shea being part of it, I think that gives you a stronger team.
Mhm.
And you're playing in the role that puts you in a position to really succeed.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what you have to. I think as athletes, that's what you have to figure out and realize. Am I in the right position to succeed
Yeah.
and excel as a player? Whether it's being a starter on the first line, the second line, the third
Yeah.
line.
Like
Or-
when you think of Drew Bennett,
Uh-huh.
right? Drew Bennett was a great compliment to you
Mhm.
for a couple years, where you were probably getting a little more attention than he was, but he was making the defense pay
Mhm.
with matchups. And at the end of the year, you guys were both very successful. When he got the money to go to the Rams,
Mhm.
it's hard to really remember big moments that he had. I don't know if they expected him to be the number one, but he
Mhm.
clearly was in a different role, different situation, and it didn't click, right?
Yeah, and that's what you know. That's
But
why,
he got paid.
yeah. But he got paid. That's why I talked about. That's why I made that sort of with Carrier. Guys, if they do leave and get more money, do they want that responsibility, or do they want to take less and just they're comfortable in the responsibility sort of lane that they're in, if they stay with their old team. And maybe Lazan thought that way, but it's what I've learned being in this profession, 15, 16 years, is that everybody is not meant for the number one role. Everybody's not meant for it. Some people are meant to play that second fiddle. Um, some people are meant to just sort of do their job and not get all of the fanfare and all that other stuff. And some guys think that they want it, think that they're ready, and then when it's thrust upon them, they're not ready. That's what organizations try to figure out. That's what fans want to know. Like, okay, yeah, that guy, he's the second guy. He's putting up numbers. Man, y'all can get rid of the first guy and y'all can insert him in there. It doesn't work like that all the time. You know, some guys and girls are meant to be that second option rather than that first option.
Complimentary player.
Exactly, because the complimentary player or the second option, there's a pressure to them, but it's not like the pressure of being the number one guy, because the number one guy is always asked to do everything. There's not any margin of error for the number one guy. For the second guy, there's some margin of error there, because you always think, well, we always got the first guy. If the second guy doesn't work out or doesn't play the way we want him to play that particular game, we can always defer to the number one guy. When you become that number one guy, if you're not ready, you may not ever, and I may repeat, may not ever get that number one spot again.
I think we can. There's a lot of examples of pitchers
Absolutely.
in baseball that where the number 3 or number 4 starter had a couple great years, got paid big as a free agent to be a number 1 or number 2,
and they're not.
But they're not quite that. They're the same pitcher. They're just getting paid more. So there is. It sounds weird to say, but it's like ironic to say there is a price to be paid for being the overpaid guy. And in this case, I think Carrier chose to stay with what he knows he's comfortable with.
Exactly.
So we'll talk to him at 1 o'clock about that. We've got Tim at noon. We've got a really good topic here in the first hour, because how many times, and look, this is going to be the theme until they get it right, did they fix the offensive line for the Titans? We had an interesting interview with Hall of Fame offensive lineman Steve Hutchinson. I think there's probably some people here in town that probably, even though he's in the Hall of Fame, don't remember him playing for the Titans, which he did at the end of his career, because he's much better known for his days as a Seahawk, where they went to the Super Bowl. That was the great year that Sean Alexander had, and Matt Hasselbeck and that team, not the Legion of Boom, but the other Seahawk team that made it a few years before that. They lost to the Steelers, Jerome Bettis and those guys. And he also played a number of years, Hutchinson did, in Minnesota. So a great career. Ended it with the Titans on a team that really didn't go that far. I think Munchak was the coach. It was just one season.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I think in that range. All that being said,
or was it Wisenhunt?
I think it was before Wisenhunt. I feel like it was when, we'll have to look it up exactly, but he stayed in town. He lives here, got elected into the Hall of Fame here in the last couple of years, but still does some consulting work for the Seahawks. He's a good buddy of Hal Gills, and when Hal was co-hosting a couple weeks ago, when DMase was on week 1 of his European tour, we had him on the show just to talk some football. And I didn't even realize he was doing some evaluating for the Seahawks, but we just asked him about J.C. Latham and Bill Callahan and some offensive line stuff, and we got some great answers. So we're going to play those for you when we come back. We're just getting it cranked up. So we've got a lot coming here on the show. You're going to want to hear this, because you've heard a lot of people questioning J.C. Latham. Can he switch from the right side to the left side? Why was he the pick? I thought they were going to take Joe Alt. He wasn't there. Should they have taken somebody else? All of these questions. I think you'll be curious to hear what Steve Hutchinson had to say about Latham exactly. Plus, what is the value of a good offensive line coach? How much difference can a guy like that make? Because that's what everybody is banking on with Bill Callahan in the Titans. So we'll have that for you. Tim Hasselbeck at noon, Alex Carrier at 1. So we got a great lineup show. Plus, one other topic we're going to tackle today is Sidney Crosby is about to turn 37 years old, and the report is out of Pittsburgh. He is going to re-up with the Steelers. With the Steelers. He's not going to play for the Steelers. I'm yo-yoing back and forth between football and hockey. This would be the Penguins. He's got three rings.
Up with the Steelers, then he's a bad man.
He's a pretty good athlete. You never know. The Steelers need some help, right? That might mess up the Steelers' salary cap a little bit. But he wants to be that guy that goes from start to finish with the same team. He values that. But are the Penguins being a little bit too sentimental with this? Even though he's still a great player, he's 37. We're going to tackle that issue, because the Titans weren't sentimental with Derrick Henry. The Lightning weren't super sentimental with Steven Stamkos. So what's the right play for the team? Is this the right move for the Penguins? Because they're not a contender right now. They've missed the playoffs the last 2 years. We know, 8 teams from each conference make the playoffs. They haven't made it the last 2 years, not even to the playoffs, let alone be a first-round exit, which happened to them, I think, the previous year, the last time they did make the playoffs. So they've been a while since they've been a contender, yet he wants to re-up. The Penguins want him to re-up. They've got an older team, so what do? They're kind of in limbo here. We're going to talk about that issue of what's the right move for the franchise and for the player when you got a special case like that. And the Titans were faced with that with Derrick Henry. We're going to tackle that later in the show as well. We're broadcasting from the Busy Bee Heating and Air Conditioning Nashville Studios, the Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. We'll get it cranking. We'll talk Titans O-line when we come back. All right, let's tell you about Loan Pronto. I've told you a lot about the Express Equity Line of Credit program, which has been helping a lot of you in our listening area month in and month out. More of you make that phone call to Loan Pronto at 615-499-5780. You ask about the Express Equity Line of Credit program. If you're a homeowner, it's a great tool for you to use your home's equity to advance yourself financially, because you're going to be able to tackle those high interest loans that could be bogging you down right now, a car loan, a credit card bill, something like that. Maybe it's a big tuition that you've got to tackle. So use your home's equity to your advantage, because it's a great tool for you. Also, a special shout out to veterans. If you're a veteran listening, did you know that you can access up to 100% of your home's equity right now with Loan Pronto's VA Equity Advantage program? Find out more about it by calling 615-499-5780. Loan Pronto makes it so easy for veterans. They trust Loan Pronto. If your current VA loan rate is over 6.5%, Loan Pronto can get you in a streamlined refi with a lower rate right now, with no income verification and no appraisals. So tackle it right now. Call Loan Pronto 615-499-5780 or go to loanpronto.com. Housing lender, NMLS 1661781. Subject to lender approval, NMLS consumeraccess.org.
And it's like, you'd be amazed how many kids coming out of college don't know how to get in three-point stance and offensive linemen, because they play in some kind of fast-paced air raid type offense where it's just kind of throw the ball 100 times a game. And, fundamentals and technique and the basic things that everybody was taught 20, 30 years ago, they kind of just rely on athleticism a little bit now and just kind of bypass all that. And then when you get to this league and everybody's a great technician on top of skilled athlete, you got to go back to a foundation. And I think a guy like Bill is going to teach all the right steps in that order for these guys to have a chance.
That was Steve Hutchinson, former Seattle Seahawk and former Tennessee Titan. And he was elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. What was it, 2 or 3 seasons ago?
I think it was 2 years ago.
2 years ago?
And he was knocking on the door for a while. That's a whole process that's interesting. But, I think I wanted to know, because I think, we take for granted that a line say, yes, the offensive line coach makes a difference. Like in baseball, I always note that the number one fall guy when a team isn't hitting is always the hitting coach. Show me a team that's not hitting. The first move that the team usually makes is to can the hitting coach. Well, I think you find out that in baseball, sometimes some hitters don't really want to talk to the hitting coach very much. They wanted to, especially if they've had success, they don't want to mess with it. They've got their way of doing things, and they don't need to hear a whole lot from the hitting coach. The hitting coach, the last thing he wants to do is screw up your style. Now, it's a little different in baseball because we're talking about individuals. Whereas an offensive line coach, you're trying to mesh together 5 guys. But Steve was really talking about how a guy like Callahan can make a difference. And so that gives me a little more confidence with the biggest question outside of the quarterback. Do they have the quarterback? Is can they fix the offensive line, which has been a mess the last 2 years? So at least I feel a little more hopeful after hearing from him that the Callahan thing is real, because I think that is going to be a big spotlight, because the special relationship, the circumstances with him being the son of the head coach, but there's a lot riding on that.
Yeah, there is. I think there's more riding on, and this is only my opinion. But I think there's more riding on Bill Callahan getting the offensive line together than Brian Callahan, having this great first year. Because to me, the only way that he have a great first year is if Bill Callahan gets the offensive line corrected. So to me, listen, Brian has a lot of responsibilities being a head coach, but I think Bill has the ultimate responsibility because his offensive line has been putrid the last 2 years.
Yeah.
It's been awful. So whereas Brian, he has the responsibility of the whole team and organization. Well, let's just say the whole team, because I think Rand has the responsibility of the organization at this point. But I think Bill Callahan's his job in this certain situation, I think we need to know with him quicker than we do need to know with Brian as the head coach. We need to know that this offensive line is fixed this season because of Bill, rather than knowing if Brian is the guy. Listen, we don't want Brian to come in and go 0 for 17 or 8-9 somewhere. We would like for him to have a good record and to get in the playoffs, but none of that can happen if Bill doesn't fix the offensive line, point blank.
We will all feel so much better about the direction of the team if the offensive line gets done, because it's not only that you're trying to make it happen with a bunch of nobodies. They have now put a pretty big investment over the last 2 years in that offensive line. Last year with Skoronski, and then this year with Latham as the left tackle and the free agent pickup of Cushenberry. So you want return on investment. Now, those 2 guys on the left are very young, but you have to hope that you've hit on those picks. And that's where Callahan hopefully can speed up the development process. And you need a little bit of luck with the health of those guys. So sometimes I like to believe from afar that if a guy's an offensive line coach in the NFL, he must be good. There can't be that much variance between whatever you think is the best offensive line coach and the worst offensive line coach. I just think all those guys to get hired at that job have to be pretty good. But I may be wrong. Like what did you think? Like you had a lot of different receiver coaches. Was there a wide range of guys that you learned a lot from, as opposed to guys that maybe you didn't? And you were like, wow, how did this guy get the job?
No, I think every guy that I had, and with the exception of probably Coach Lowry, it wasn't that Coach Lowry, I didn't think he was a good coach, but Coach Lowry had the responsibility of the special teams as well.
Okay.
So he had not only the wide receivers, but he was doing special teams, I believe, when he was coaching the wide receivers as well, if I'm not mistaken. So that may have been the only coach that I'm not going to say I didn't learn a lot. I didn't learn anything, because I did learn from him, but he had dual responsibilities, I believe, that first year, if I'm not mistaken. So his mind was sort of being pulled both ways, both on the special teams as well as a receiver coach. But then after that, I mean, every receiver coach that I had the pleasure of, being coached by, they all taught me something different.
Okay.
They all taught me something, that helped me further my career. I don't think I ever stepped into a room even in college, I don't think I ever stepped into a room where I didn't think that the guy that was coaching me wasn't doing a great job at helping me hone in on my skill.
So that's why I'm a little careful, because I'm not sure that it's fair
Mhm.
for Bill Callahan to be Mr. Magic, right? To instantly turn these guys all into the greatest offensive line of all time. But I feel like the expectation level
Mhm.
is very high with him and his track record. And I'm guessing he embraces that.
Mhm.
He wants that challenge, but he has been given some pretty good talent to work with, at least on the left side, right? The right side is the real key. We're going to get into that a little bit later. But what I wouldn't want to see if I'm Brian Callahan is halfway through the year, if the offensive line is still struggling,
Mhm.
is all the heat and the noise that there would be if Brian Callahan's being asked, well, what's going on with the offensive line? You brought your dad in.
Yeah, that's tough.
They're supposed to be much better. They're not getting it done. What's going on?
Mhm.
That's potentially what you could see, because the expectation level is so high.
And that's why I said what I said at the beginning, that out of all of these coaches, I think, and listen, it's just the way it is, I think right now at this particular moment that Bill Callahan's job is going to be the job that everyone is watching.
Yes.
That everyone is sort of scrutinizing whether these guys are getting better or not. They're going to be looking at this position like no other position. Not to say that Brian Callahan doesn't need to get this team going and show some press, but can't show progress unless the offensive line is fixed.
Right.
That's why everybody's going to be looking at Bill Callahan.
That's the catch-22, because sometimes I think the assumption has been the last couple of years that the offensive line coach has been deficient. They've had a couple different guys, and that was a problem. And maybe it was. But I will sit here, I can tell you that I don't know. I'm not the guy that always just assumes, well, offensive line isn't good, they must not be very well coached. But that's an assumption that a lot of people make, fans, media, etc., from the outside. And I don't know if that's always true. Like, even though you don't know the name, the name of the offensive line coach may not have a lot of street cred. It doesn't mean that he doesn't know what he's doing. That's what I worry about a little bit, is that I think there's a perception that Callahan is going to be way better than his predecessors. Maybe that's true. That's why I value what Steve Hutchinson said there, because he does think he is a difference maker.
Yeah.
But what's realistic is my question.
Well,
and it certainly helps if you got some Jimmys and Joes in there. Like the last guy didn't have Cushionberry.
Yeah, he didn't have Latham.
He didn't have Latham, right? He had
Dillard.
a hodgepodge.
He had other guys in there that just
Duncan
that just couldn't get the job done. And listen, Hutch talked about this in the interview about having that coach. Like the offensive line takes on the personality of their coach. And I think that's true, because I look at, when I was here and we had dominant offensive line, Mike Munchak was the head coach. Mike Munchak was the offensive line coach. Mike Munchak is a Hall of Famer. Mike Munchak go about his business a certain way. He's a no-nonsense guy. He teaches technique. He's big on technique. And then you watch our offensive linemen, and they were the same. They were no-nonsense guys. They were about their technique. They were about going out there and playing physical. They didn't say much. You know why? Because their head coach didn't say that. That was his personality, and they took on his personality. That's what this offensive line must do. They must take on the personality of their offensive line
I thought
coach.
that was a great point that he made, that it does take on the personality. That is where an offensive line coach can make his mark.
Exactly.
The line buys into his thing.
His philosophy, the way he thinks, the way he approaches, the game, how he teaches it. And if Bill is a technician, He's all about technique. What Hutch said about Latham, this should be a marriage made in heaven. You know, Bill loves technique. Latham, Hutch talked about Latham and his technique. You know, how he's a technician when it comes to a big guy that can move that well, but also is a technician. You know, so those two guys should be hand in hand. It's like hand in glove.
Well, let's hear what Steve Hutchinson had about Latham, because we all remember this was one of the early Avenger moments of the summer, is because on draft night, Jared was doing our coverage and DMase was on the panel, and Jared freaked out on the microphone. We played the promo all the time. We don't have to play. Oh no! Why did they pick this guy? And there's been a lot of discourse, a lot of questions, and they're fair questions. Is number one, was Latham worthy of being the 7th pick? Because he wasn't in a lot of the mock drafts. It shows you how different it can be for a team as opposed to those that put together mock drafts, and those people work very, very hard to do it. But it doesn't mean that that's how the draft is going to flow. And the other part was, did he have remember, DMase went on a tirade about questioning the body type, right? Jared, Joe, Rexroad even was questioned this. Does he have the body type to be a left tackle as opposed to a right tackle? And your response was,
yeah,
quite high style.
Exactly. I was very adamant that day about, because if you're basing it, if one of your biggest sort of apprehensions is his body type, get the hell out of here. Body, what? That's why you're so worried, is because of his body type? If you listen to everybody that have talked about JC Latham, the one or two things that they always say about this guy, one, they talk about his power and him being aggressive, but then they talk about how a guy that big can move. Like he from side to side lateral movement and up the field, he moves like no other. He's a big guy. You don't see big guys moving the way he moves. So when I hear that, I don't think body type. I just think he's a good athlete. A good athlete, you could put anywhere and they will figure it out.
That's why I knew you would really like what Steve Hutchinson had to say, which is why we're doing this today. And I immediately sent this interview to Jared, who's on vacation this week, but I would love to know.
I'm glad you interrupted his vacation.
Assuages. No, I did it before he went on vacation.
Dang
but
it.
I wanted to know if this has assuaged his doubts, because Jared, he's going to stick to his guns. He's going to keep making this a thing until he is proven wrong. But here's what Steve Hutchinson had as an evaluation, first and foremost, about JC Latham. Now, keep in mind, Steve Hutchinson, this isn't just him from his couch.
Exactly.
He is evaluating for the Seattle Seahawks the draft prospects. And this is what he had to say about Latham.
The lineman coming out every year, that's kind of part of my job for Seattle. And he was my top guy on the board. So,
wow.
So you don't really see guys that size that can move and play with technique. So, we've spent a lot of this segment talking about all that. Like, this guy's kind of got it all. And I think from the few times I've interviewed him and sat with him at the combine and all that, like, guy's wired right. So I think they got a good one. And then, don't write off the kid from last year, Northwestern, Skoronski.
Yeah, Skoronski.
He's a good player. Another good technician. Like, they're building it the right way.
So very optimistic about where the Titans are going. And I think it's good perspective, because even though he played for the Titans and he lives in Nashville, I think he is being honest. I don't think he's sitting there going, well, I live in Nashville. Let me say some nice things about who the Titans have. I really think he's a very straight shooter, and he was evaluating these guys for the draft. So he hit on what you hit on. The size and athleticism combo will play in his mind, and he likes his makeup.
Yeah, he does. And, with guys like that, again, when you got a Hall of Famer evaluating, this position, which the position he played, left tackle. I think Hutch was a tackle or guard? What did he? I know he played some guard, and I know he played some tackle, but I don't know.
At one point, he was the highest paid offensive lineman in the game.
Yeah, he
I
was.
think. Let me. I I think he is listed as a guard
Okay.
here. Yeah.
Okay. So he's a guard. I think he played some tackle at times. But you're asking a guy that has played the position um, to evaluate an individual. And again, he could have easily have said, listen, I didn't have him. I had him, high on my board as far as offensive lineman. I had him in my top 5, but he wasn't my number 1. He could have said that if that was in case the truth. He could have said that. He was a top 5 guy for me. But he went out of his way. It was like, this is the guy that I had ranked number 1. Because of what we talked about, Willie, a second ago. A big guy with the athleticism to move the way he can move. He can play right. He can play left. Right now they have him at left, and they plan on keeping him there. And Hut said he'll figure it out because of his athleticism.
Let's hear a little bit more about what he said, because I asked specifically, because this is the other thing that a lot of people were wondering. How easy is it to switch to the left tackle when you have been playing at the right tackle? And I remember the clip very well, because these are legitimate questions to ask from the outside. Chad Withrow and Jared, one day I can remember, we were having going back through his days at Alabama. Why didn't they ever move him to the left, and in all the circumstances? Well, here's what Steve Hutchinson had to say about a guy who played right tackle in college moving to left tackle in the pros.
For the most part, these guys know that they just got to hunker down. And when you're young, it's hard. It's a different game from the college level. The game is faster. The players are faster. A lot of these kids are doing things that they've never had to do in college. A lot of these, and like what I mean by that is 3-point stance. I do scouting for the Seahawks now, and I kind of work in the offensive line. And it's like, you'd be amazed how many kids coming out of college don't know how to get in 3-point stance and offensive linemen, because they play in some kind of fast-paced air raid type offense where it's just kind of throw the ball 100 times a game. And fundamentals and technique and the basic things that everybody was taught 3 years ago, they kind of just rely on athleticism a little bit now and just kind of bypass all that and get to this.
We're going to play more of that clip on the other side, but that is one thing in the context of all this that we touched on also, is it's kind of hard to find offensive line prospects these days. And so when you find one, you want to grab him, because he was just getting into the college game. So many offenses that we see, he said there's a lot of linemen that don't even get into a 3-point stance, that you have to, because that's not how it's going to be in the NFL, right? You're doing things for the first time when you get to the NFL. But I think that's also part of a bigger answer when he looks at guys like Latham and Skoronski, is that they have been prepared much better for the pro game, and they have some good athleticism as well.
Exactly, because a lot of these guys, even when you're running the football in college, you're set up in a pro stance, because a lot of these are OP, run option type of run pass type of plays. And, so the offensive lineman can't get into a 3-point stand. They got to sort of get into this, pass block or pass pro stance because they don't know if the ball is being thrown. And once they figure out the ball's not being thrown, then they sort of, adjust based upon that. But very seldom do you see, unless you go to schools like Michigan or Alabama, where they're running the football and they're running it out of pro sets at times, especially Michigan. So you saw a bunch of their linemen in 3-point stands. But if you go to, say Oregon or, I don't know, A&M, Texas A&M, schools that throw the ball a lot, you see these tackles in these 2-point stands, pass pro stance, because they know more than likely they're throwing the football rather than running it.
All right, when we come back, we'll hear more specifics from Steve Hutchinson on switching from right to left and the challenges that go with this. And is he worried about Latham? Good perspective from a Hall of Fame offensive lineman as we try to answer the big question. Have the Titans fixed maybe their biggest problem over the last 2 years, and that is the offensive line? DMase and I will also get into what we're going to see in camp on the right side of the offensive line. That is where Callahan might have to work some magic, and we'll see if he can get production out of the hodgepodge that's sort of left over from the lines that have not done as well the last 2 years. That's coming up in our next segment. Don't forget at noon, Tim Hasselbeck is going to join us. We'll talk NFL stuff with him as we got a little summer football show going on. And don't forget at 1 o'clock, we'll continue to get the fallout, the aftermath of the big moves that the Predators made in the offseason. Defenseman Alex Carrier is going to join us at 1 o'clock. So stay tuned. We're getting it cranking here on 102.5 The Game. This is Willy and DMase.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. This is Derek Mason, and you heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you have set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a resolution to shed some extra pounds only to face disappointment. And I want you to know you're not in this boat alone, okay, people? At Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. So you got to come at it from a different angle, people, and we're going to give you some, or Dr. Lodge is going to give you something or take you through some things that is going to help you reach that goal of the weight you want to be at this year with a comprehensive weight loss program, which is led by Dr. Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain, okay? With tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific for you and no one else. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
What
They're
about
building it the
switching
right way.
sides? That's another thing that comes up a lot. Latham played on the right side. They want him to be the left tackle. How tough is that?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be a big issue for him. You know, especially when you got a guy that size that can move the way he does, and he plays, like I said, with the technique he does. He's not just out there kind of like just winging it. Like that guy plays within himself, within the scheme, and I think he'll figure it out. He'll figure it out.
Hall of Fame offensive lineman Steve Hutchinson here on Willy and DMase, which is brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 and up and in Tennessee to bet. Tim Hasselbeck will talk football with us at noon, but we're focusing in on the big issues of the Titans offensive line. It has been their Achilles heel the last couple of years. There's no doubt about it. Wanted to get some good perspective from Steve on that. And so I was a little surprised, DMase, that he thought it would be I don't know if I would say he thought it would be easy, but he doesn't think it'll be a problem for Latham because of his athleticism and something he noted before when he was evaluating Latham for the Seahawks before the draft is that he has been taught well. His technique is going to allow him to be able to move over successfully. So he feels like he can do it. That gave me confidence to hear him say that.
Yeah, it does. And you know, because this is a guy that evaluated him coming out of college. And I'm sure he spent a lot of hours watching tape. He got a chance to sit down and talk with him. And, you know, he's conveying to, you know, you and Hal that, listen, I don't think you have a problem. And I understand when people hear that, they think, oh my goodness, he's just going to switch over to the left side. And he's going to be fine. He's going to be all Pro Bowler the first year. No, that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is, listen, the transition that he's making, whereas he's going to have to do the work, he's going to have to put in the time, he's going to have to be coachable, but it's not something that I don't think he cannot do.
Right.
You know, it won't happen. The only way it doesn't happen to me is if, you know, injury, one, and if he just turns out to not be a coachable guy, which that one I don't think will happen.
It doesn't seem that way.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Everybody seems to be raving about his personality and makeup.
Absolutely. And so when I hear Hutch say that, I hear, listen, he's going to take his lumps. He's going to, you know, just like any other rookie, especially going from one side to the other. But because of his athleticism, because of his technique, he'll figure it out. It'll be fine. You know, it may take a couple of games. It may take a half a year, but he's going to figure it out. So don't worry about it. That's what I hear when I'm listening to Hutch. I don't hear, oh, he's going to move over there and he's just going to be an all-pro. I hear, no, he's gonna struggle some because it's the NFL and he's stepping up to another level, but he'll be okay because of the makeup, because of the athleticism.
I think this is a big question, and that is, how quick are we expecting the results? That's the problem that I think they're going to run into. Is everybody's so starved to get it fixed, but you have a first-year guy and a second-year guy over there. Hopefully, Cushenberry is going to help, and Callahan is going to help. But the bottom line that I see is I'm willing to give it time. I'm willing to give it the whole year.
Yeah.
If I know that it's going to solidify those two positions for a long time in particular, and really those three positions, because you hope that Cushenberry centers can play a little longer. It seems like, you know, hopefully Cushenberry's not just a 1 or 2 year fix, that he can be part of the next really good Titans team. So I'll take some early 4 to 8 game struggles, but they're going to have to go through. I think that's another reason why I'm trying to keep my expectations low for this team. But that is, to me, the long-term question is, I'll take some early struggles if I know that down the road they have hit on these 2 first-round picks. That's a huge part of the big picture.
And I think that's the way people need to approach it. I know that's not always the case, because, you know, if you go back and listen to the interview, which you can go back and
just go to theGameNashville.com. I recommend it. It's great football talk.
It's a really good interview because he gets into other things beside,
Yeah.
just
For example, he played college ball with Tom Brady at Michigan for 4 years.
So he tells, different stories about his career and what has helped him and whatnot. So, when you have a guy like Latham, uh, the the sort of the ups and downs will be there. Um, but he believes that, hey, listen, this guy's going to be all right. Um, a part of it is because of the because of the offensive line coach and Bill Callahan, but then because of Latham's makeup, and I think because of the university that he came from, and what they were teaching them, technique wise. So Hutch has a different perspective on, not just Latham, but he talked briefly about Skoronski as well. But he has a different perspective on those guys because he knows. And he even spoke. That's why I say you need to go back and listen to the interview, because it's a really good interview, because he even talked about a little, when he was playing, which was when I was playing, the
Right.
generation
You guys are the same
before
era.
this generation. Yeah. He may have been a couple years older than me. I think a couple years
Pretty
younger.
close, I think.
Yeah, we're right around. He may have been right around
Let's
the
see.
same
He
age.
came into the league.
I came 97, so he came
in 2001.
Oh, so he's what, 4 years?
Let's see.
He
is 46.
Yeah, so he's 4 years, behind me. But
you were hoping you were younger than
yeah,
him,
dang it, I was hoping I was younger, but I look younger, so that don't matter. No, I'll mess with you. No, but he just talked about, how there was this patience with individuals, and he talked about the quarterback, but there were patience with certain positions and individuals. It was like he even said it, 3 to 5 years this quarterback can be ready. Let's just take time. Let's usher him in slowly. We're not going to worry about it, but 3 to 5 years he'll be ready to go. Now it's like, if you're not ready after a year, we may have to go. We may draft.
The trouble signs go up. The red flags start happening.
Yeah. Somebody else.
And after 3 years, if you're not, it's over.
It's over. Yeah. So when he and I think that goes the same for other positions, left tackle or whatnot. There was a time when you could work into being who you were as a player. They give you some grace. They give you a few years to figure this out. No, they're not giving you that anymore. It's either you step on the field and you're ready to go right now, or we're constantly looking to replace you somehow, some way. Whereas Hutch said, listen, this kid will be okay. He's going to make the transition. He has all the tools that you need to make the transition. He'll be okay. The thing is, will the Titans give him time to be okay? Or if he struggles, are they constantly looking over their shoulder, trying to figure out, hey, where's our next left tackle coming from?
Yeah, and boy, I that's not a good way to
no,
be.
It's not,
because they really need him. They should give him some time, and I think in the context too of the team, I wouldn't panic if the team doesn't do great this year.
Exactly.
It's really the key is, are you laying the foundation for the next year or two? Because I think you have a year here of, let's see what we got. If you want to call it a rebuild, I don't have a problem with you saying it's a rebuild. I know some people don't like to do that. They're like, oh, people will buy tickets. They won't. No, people are going to watch. They're going to watch the team. This is a rebuild. It's a new era. See what you got. And that's a big part of it on the left side of the line. So great stuff from Steve Hutchinson. We're going to continue with some good football conversation in our next segment with Tim Hasselbeck. He will join us here on 102.5 The Game. So keep it right here. Willy and DMase, moving on to hour number 2, and we are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willy Donick, Derek Mason here with you. Tim Hasselbeck is joining us, ESPN football analyst, and now head coach of the Ensworth Tigers. So let's just see what the summer, the dead period is over. So you can kind of get with your team now. So let's see what's happening in Tigerland over there. Tim, how's it going?
It's going well. Dead period was good, but glad it's over because you're right. Get with the team, and it was day 2 back with the team. So 2 good days with the guys being back. We did not spend too much time at the beach, I think, or at least if we they I don't know, they ate well or ran on the beach or they did something.
So did the kids come back? Because I heard y'all in helmets. You're doing install. So did the kids come back ready to go?
Yeah, there's always this wonder, what will the retention be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you get a little spring ball, you have some June, workouts where you can start to talk a little bit of football. And so then you take 2 weeks where you're thinking about, which ice cream place you're going to go to on 30A after you get a sunburn. And when you come back, hey, how much of that football did you retain? But our guys have done a really good job. So, yeah, these are kind of like, OTAs basically right now. We're in the OTA phase where lifting and running, bonding with your teammates and, trying to learn some football. It's been great.
So, Tim, Coach, I don't know if you go to 30A. I've never been to 30A. I've heard people talk about 30A. Maybe I need to go to 30A. But I know it's a lot of people that you're familiar with when you go down there. So if you have been and you've seen some of your kids there, do they act a little weird because you're there and they feel like I can't eat this or I can't do this because coach is watching?
Well, so
you have the assumption, right? The coach is always watching.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, first off, the coach is always watching. They don't know where I'm getting my information, but I'm getting it. Okay? They don't tell me that you didn't go to that party. They don't tell me any of that. Okay? I got eyes everywhere. And then I would also say, so I had never been to 38 until I moved to Nashville.
Uh-huh.
And then it was well, shoot, this is where I'm from, you go to Cape Cod. That's Willy's old baseball stomping ground.
I wish.
When you're in Massachusetts, you go to Cape Cod.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, I guess if you're in Nashville, you just drive to 30A. So we did that, and what I realized was we just moved Lower Broadway to the beach. That's all we did.
Everybody from Nashville goes to 30A.
Yeah. So
Basically.
So I've only been there. A couple times. Been great, but in my new role, DMase, over the dead period, I chose a different beach.
Good choice, Coach. Good choice.
There used to be a rule for our minor league baseball team. I think this is basically the rule for all minor league baseball teams, the rule of thumb, that the hotel bar that the team is staying with is for the coaches.
Yes.
You cannot go to the hotel bar as a player because the coaches do not want to be around any of you yo-yos, right? Go anywhere but there. That's their home turf. That was our rule. And you really didn't want to see those guys anyway.
No, absolutely.
You're going to see them at the park the next day anyway. So good stuff. So speaking of vacations, Tim, this is a great example of the microscope that an NFL quarterback is under. And not only an NFL quarterback, but the Dallas Cowboys NFL quarterback, the Dak Prescott walking boot thing, where he did have season-ending surgery for a compound fracture in 2020. So I can see where people were saying, oh, boy, he's got the walking boot on. But I have seen people wear walking boots who are like hockey players that are playing every game. They're not missing any time. And so he stressed that it was nothing. But isn't that just you can't get away even if you want to get away? He was in Cabo when this is all going down.
I mean, it's amazing now. I just tell you, if you think of during the season, if Dak Prescott is in a walking boot, during the season when he's got a game 5 days later, it'll be like a Schefter report of he's questionable, but everyone knows he's going to be in a walking boot at the beginning of the week and still play that weekend. We get to June and he's in a walking boot, and where it's breaking news and we wonder if it's going to jeopardize Mike McCarthy's job. And it is, we do have overreaction Mondays during the season. It's overreaction, June, just because there's not as much going on. So yeah, I mean, anytime a guy takes a day off of throwing, I feel like that starts to happen, right? Where, there's all the questions about, well, I mean, is his shoulder okay? Is he going to be all right? Joe Burrow's wrist don't typically have this injury. So yeah, I think we got a long runway, till it's real football time. But I think it's just the nature of the coverage right now because of all the attention, and obviously because he's the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's sitting there going, can I just get away for a couple of days and not have something like this happen? It's got to be tough.
He should have just gone to 30A. Like Combo, like NFL reporters watching. You go to 30A and unless Krieger was going to report that he's going to walk in boot, it would have been all right.
That's great. Does Krieger probably's got some people down there on 30A? Let me ask you this, Tim, on the Falcons front. The move that everybody's going to be watching is how in the world, because people are questioning why they did this to begin with, but the Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix partnership that they have to form here, how long do they go with Cousins, who's making big money? They used the first-round pick for Michael Penix. How is that going to work?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think Cousins, because he throws for about, 4,000 yards and 38 touchdowns every year, I think he's going to play really well, which is going to keep – and he's got good talent around him. I mean, and he's going to an offense that he knows. So I think part of what happens is I think he plays well, which keeps Penix on the bench. And I think people just start to question it more and more. Like, as long as Cousins is healthy, I think you can just pencil him in. 4,000 yards, 28 to 30 touchdowns, 12 picks. I think he's going to have a good run game and all that stuff. He might even play a little bit better. And so when you get to that point, you're just going to say, well, you're not replacing that guy with Michael Penix. You can't. So, the more I've heard since the draft, the more I'm surprised by the move, because I think Cousins ended up being really surprised by the move. I don't know that it was really the plan going into the draft by Atlanta. And so I totally didn't really hate it. Yeah. When it happened. Mm-hmm. I think the more I'm learning about it, the less I think it was a good idea.
Yeah, a lot of people were quick to say this is the worst move of the offseason, right? It's just, and it's an easy one to throw out there from afar, but I do wonder how it's going to play out.
Yeah, and I think when it happened, it's part of it. Like, look, you got an older guy coming off an Achilles injury. He knows the offense, so Penix is going to watch somebody do it the right way. That's a good thing. But the more I think about Penix's age, his injury history, and the fact that Kirk's going to play well, he is in that offense with those players, the more I think it's going to be hard to get Penix on the field.
I think with Kurt as the quarterback, you put yourself in a position to win in the AFC. What is it? The NFC South. Yep. So you put yourself in a position to win.
Hasn't been a juggernaut of divisions.
Yeah, which it's been, up for grabs for the last couple of seasons at least. But in that situation, you look at it and you say, well, it wasn't probably the right move to make. We could have went out and addressed a different position. But I think Atlanta, just like maybe some other teams, probably got scared at what they saw in New York with the Jets. You put all of this, you put all your eggs in one basket, and then the first game of the season, a guy goes down, and now you're trying to scramble to at least make the season respectable. I think that's why Atlanta chose to draft a quarterback in the first round after they went and got Cousins, because they don't want to be caught in a position that the Jets were in.
Yeah, and I agree with you, DMase. Totally agree with you. The thing I would say, though, is this. If you're doing what, like the Jets were doing, and you're investing, like with Cousins, I think it's $100 million guaranteed over the first 3 years, right? So, that money is being spent. And so you're protecting yourself with Penix, like to me, that's not how I do it. Like I protect myself with Mason Rudolph. I protect myself with Drew Lock. Like I protect myself with somebody that I'm like, no, I think you can play. Like you're a backup, but I think you're a good backup, and maybe you're actually a starter in a better environment. You know, if with us coaching you better. So like, and you know, with that guy, you know, you maybe are getting him on a 1-year deal, right? Like, so I think the commitment, you know, because the commitment to Penix is a 5-year commitment because you drafted him in the first round, and the commitment to Cousins is minimum a 3-year commitment. So like that's, you know, that's why I think it's like that's how I would solve the problem of I'm putting all these eggs into this basket, and if he gets hurt, I need someone that can play. Well, give me the guy that actually has a handful of starts under his belt.
We'll talk with Tim Hasselbeck, head football coach with the Innsworth Tigers and the NFL, ESPN NFL analyst as well. Now, Tim, we had a conversation yesterday about guys that the Titans couldn't afford to lose or miss any time. We had to pick one on offense and one on defense. I chose to go away from Will Levis because I believe in what, you know, Mason Rudolph can do if he needs to come in and play 2, 3, 4 games. I don't think they will miss a beat. I think he would be able to at least go 500 in that span. Do you see him, Mason Rudolph, as a quarterback? One, do you see, you know, Levis as being a guy that needs to be in there, that they got to have him as their quarterback each and every game? Or because Mason Rudolph has accomplished some things in the NFL, he played pretty well with Pittsburgh last year when he had to play, that if they do lose a Will Levis for a game or two, do you think they will still be okay with Mason Rudolph as their starter?
I do. I think Mason Rudolph can play. I think he's a good player. And, you know, I think when people kind of evaluate him, like he got thrown into the fire too early as a young player. I mean, remember the whole thing with Myles Garrett?
Oh, boy.
It was a rough start. And I really think that, and DMase, you just said it, he played well last year. Like he stabilized things last year. And, you know, the offensive coordinator situation, like things weren't great in Pittsburgh, and he kind of made them better. I think that he is on the upper tier of backup quarterbacks in the NFL, which means to me, like he's a guy with the right opportunity, in the right fit, with the right guys, all that. Like, yeah, he's playing like a starter. So I actually feel really good about that spot if you're the Titans. And I would also say this. I think we've talked about this, and I just brought up like Drew Lock as the example. I actually think when you look at the contract, like the Titans actually found themselves in a pretty good spot, you know, in terms of a backup quarterback that's proved you can play at a starter level at times.
Now, we had a conversation. Well, we did have a conversation about that. But Brandon Ayuk, this is what I'm trying to figure out. And maybe you can help me with this because you're a little bit younger than I am, Tim. But why is it that players now believe that if they do something from a social media standpoint, that it will help them in their negotiations? Like the last thing IU put out was him watching film of the Washington Commanders. Why would you? I don't understand why these young men or players do this now, scrubbing their, you know, their social media of their team that they're currently on, and then end up, you know, putting them back on their social media, doing things like this that is garnering a lot of attention, but is it actually helping in the negotiations? Why do you feel players do things like this nowadays?
Young and immature, man. And I think they, you know, probably grew up in an environment where like everybody's paying, they feel like everybody's paying attention to them on social media, and maybe they are to an extent. I just think it's just a maturity thing. Like, could you imagine? Like, this would be a good example. I was just at a football camp and kind of spent the day with Larry Fitzgerald. We were teammates in Arizona, and like I couldn't ever imagine Larry Fitzgerald doing something like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like now, like he's way older. There's probably some wisdom in it, but like, and DMase, like, you were a little bit of a diva, but you would have never done something like that,
No,
right? Like,
no.
I just, like,
There's different levels of diva, right?
Exactly.
yeah, like, I think that it's changed a little bit. And part of it has probably been, like, I've seen other guys do it in the past. And, like, but I don't think things like that help you. I really don't. And I actually think it works against you. And the Brandon Ayuk's a great player. He's going to end up getting paid. He's going to end up making the money he deserves to make and all that stuff. And I think some people will look at it like, oh, yeah, well, like that helped him. And it's like, no, that didn't help him. What helped him is that he's a really good player. And if he actually just, did things the right way, where it's like, hey, I understand you all asked about my contract, but like, we're good. Like, we're good. It's going to work itself out, And then he had his agent just absolutely hammering, everybody in the front office about like, hey, just so you know, like, you better be ready for a hold in, like, you better be ready. Like have him be the bad guy behind the scene, like, do it that way. That is a much better approach. But I just don't know that guys really understand that that's the better approach.
But he could have picked a better team. The Washington Commanders, I know Daniels is his boy, but I'm not trying to leave the San Francisco 49ers where we are almost a shoo-in to at least represent the NFC in the Super Bowl to the Washington Commanders. I know they are possibly an up-and-coming team. I get that. But they ain't that up-and-coming where I need to be, putting them on my social media saying that's where I'm going.
Hey, it's like if that's your threat, like, oh, be careful. You want to go there and catch 37 balls next year? Okay, good. Good luck to you. Yeah, that's the maturity thing. That's the maturity factor. Hey, listen, you post a place where you're like, shoot, he could go there and catch 117 balls. Okay, now maybe you got my attention.
Tim, one more before we let you go here. I'm really rooting for Carson Beck. The Manning camp is going on this week, and I'm rooting for Carson Beck, not with any ties to Georgia. I don't really care whether Georgia wins or not, but I admire this guy because he has gone against the grain as a very highly recruited quarterback who has not transferred. He sat for a couple years behind one of Derek's favorite quarterbacks, Stetson Bennett. Speaking of older quarterbacks who came out of college. But this guy really looks like he's tracking to be a high first-round pick next year, and he took a different path. He hasn't played for 3 different teams, and I'm hoping that he can be an example for others. And I understand there's always going to be quarterbacks, especially that transfer, because there's only one guy who can play. But at least there's a roadmap for somebody that say, yeah. And Arch Manning is trying to do the same thing, right? He's saying, no, I'm not transferring. I'm sticking it out, and I'm going to have my time. So I'm hoping there is a little bit of normalization of this to where every kid who's not playing after 1 year is saying, well, I got to transfer just like everybody else.
Yeah, I think the 2 exceptions on both those guys is that the quarterback in waiting, the quarterback 1 play away at Georgia and Texas might be making more money than the starters other places. That's the difference. Like it's just the difference. Like, Riley Leonard leaves Duke. There was more money elsewhere, and you're going to probably go play with better players, So, the guy a play away, the guy in waiting, the guy who's going to play with a bunch of first-round draft picks is also a guy that's probably making more money than the starter at a different school. So, yes, it would be great, but I think that those guys, I think that those schools, it's a different environment than being the starting quarterback at Duke, being the starting quarterback at Kentucky, and those guys are making money too. Don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit different. And then people are recruiting, Georgia and Texas are going to explain that. Like I say, hey, look, you can go run over there for another $150,000, or you can play the long game. And I think most of the guys, Arch for sure, and are getting enough advice to know that that is the better plan, to play the long game.
It is a good point that you're making. It is. I guess it's easier to play the long game if you are getting paid in the meantime. But I saw some quotes out of the Manning camp of Carson Beck saying, you're working just as hard as the starter, just as hard as all these guys, and you don't get on the field on those, and you play less games in football. That's a tough thing to shoulder, but to at least buy into, even if you are getting compensated, to buy into the process of, yes, I can get better while I'm not in the limelight. That's admirable to me.
Yeah, and listen, I think it's look, all quarterbacks want to be out there. Look, I used to say the same thing, but I'm getting the mental reps. I'm getting the mental reps. Like, you just say the same thing too, and you try to, you have to, and it is hard. The path to play is important, and I think that's part of it too. It's like if you're assured of your path to play, that's different than being in a situation where you're like, okay, the starter's going to leave, and then I think I might be the guy. Kind of an assurance of, hey, you're the guy. That is a different environment.
You got one more, DMase?
Nah, not really. I thought about it. I thought asking Tim about, what he did for the 4th of July, but I know, he probably bought up all of the fireworks in Davidson County and had a big shindig at his place,
So, hey, listen, look, here's what I did. Okay, Willie, I stayed in the United States. Unlike some people, like running to Europe. Okay? I mean, okay.
So you got
Very
one
patriotic.
on me. Yeah, fair. I get
That's
it.
Right. I had my feet firmly planted on U.S. soil.
We were having some fun at your expense, DMase. So Tim, just kind of guessing we're trying to get a visual, maybe where you were while Tim was on with us last week.
Yeah, I was a little bit of everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for DMase to post that picture of him in a Speedo on the yacht.
The French Riviera. Yeah.
Hey, you're going to be waiting on that one.
Tim, back to work. Good luck with your Tigers, and we'll talk to you again soon.
See you guys. Bye.
All right, good stuff. Tim Hasselbeck, always great to talk football with here on the show. Willy and DMase, 102.5 The Game. When we come back, another big issue, right? And that is when to let go of the superstar in your organization. The guy that might have his number retired, might have a statue. You're going to – and the Titans were in that situation with Derrick Henry and parted ways. The Penguins are going to re-up with Sidney Crosby, it looks like, as he turns 37 years old. And not cheap. 3 years, $10 million per year is what we think the ballpark is going to be. We'll talk about that decision when we come back and how tough that can be on both sides of the equation, for the player and for the organization. Stay tuned. We're coming back.
we've had heading into an episode of this podcast.
Yeah, well, let's start with some fresh news, courtesy of our friend Rob Rossi, who does a terrific job along with Josh Yohe of covering the Pittsburgh Penguins. Rob Rossi puts out earlier today on Monday that the Pittsburgh Penguins are closing in on a contract extension for Sidney Crosby. So I'm imagining Sid turns 37, Laz, in August. Sidney Crosby is going to be 37.
We're all so old, Ian. We're so old.
Oh, I know this because I'm 10 years older than Sid. So it hurts that Sid is going to be 37. But it never felt like this guy was going to go anywhere else, did it?
No. And you know, I keep, you know, I'm as a guy who's covered the Chicago Blackhawks for 12 years, I immediately came to the Taves and Kane decision where they decided to walk away from those guys. And the more I started drawing comparisons, the more I realized it's not apples to apples, because Sidney Crosby is still one of the 10 best players in the world. Like you can still win with Sidney Crosby. You can make an argument that you couldn't do that with Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves anymore. Certainly not at like a $10 million salary. So it's not the same, but it's kind of the same in that, you know, the Penguins still have this core of Crosby, Malkin, Letang. You bring in Erik Karlsson now. What are the Pittsburgh Penguins? I mean, are they just a novelty act now? Are they a nostalgia act?
Therein lies the issue with the Pittsburgh Penguins and their legendary superstar, Sidney Crosby. Made me think of a lot of different players throughout their careers. It's always a great trivia question as we turn here to Willy and DMase here on 102.5 The Game. Name the team that so-and-so ended his career for. Joe Montana, Kansas City Chiefs, right? Yeah. Franco Harris, Seattle Seahawks, right? It's.
How about Eric Dickerson?
Eric Dickerson. Ooh. Well, I know he went to the Colts. Did he play for somebody after the Colts?
I think he went to somebody after the Colts.
Did he go to the Falcons for a minute?
It might have been the Falcons, yeah.
All right, let's look this up.
It might have been the Falcons.
But it happens in sports more than you think. A guy who's a legendary player who you picture in your mind in one jersey and one jersey only, sometimes has another stop or two before they're actually done playing. Sidney Crosby appears to be one that wants to be, and he did go. So Dickerson went to the Raiders and then the Falcons.
So he ended his career with the Falcons.
So he played for 4 teams, even though our first thing is you think about him as
a Ram.
He did have a couple of good years with the Colts when he moved on. He had a contract dispute. This was before free agency.
They traded him for didn't they? Was it him for Marshall Faulk? No, that was
Edgerrin James.
Yeah, Edgerrin James for Faulk.
Faulk.
Yeah,
right?
Yep. Let me see.
No, James went to free agency and they brought in.
Faulk was with New England.
No, they drafted Edgerrin James and they traded Faulk to the Rams. Yeah. I don't know what they got for Faulk. That's another good one. But Sidney Crosby, it seems like he is going to value wanting to be a Mr. Penguin, right? Mario Lemieux, who was a legend for the Penguins, who owned the team when the Penguins won the lottery and won Sidney Crosby. Sidney Crosby was a teenager, and he lived with Mario Lemieux the first couple of years while he got acclimated to adult life, professional life, and the rest is history. He's won 3 cups. He also is probably one of the greatest values per dollar of a contract signed. He signed a 12-year contract at $8.7 million per year, which started off as one of the higher paid guys, and now he's one of the best bargains in the game. But to be the value he's been for 12 years is amazing. And they're finally now going into the last year of that deal. So they could have, on either side, said, you know what, Sid, we've gotten your best years. Let's put you on the trade block. Let's send you to somebody who has a chance to win. You can go out with a bang. He wanted to stay in Pittsburgh. And the Penguins seem to want to keep him in Pittsburgh, even though for the last 2 years, the Penguins have not even made the playoffs. And then the prior couple years, they really didn't contend in the playoffs. It's been a while. They won the back-to-back cups. They beat the Predators for the second one in 2017. They lost to Barry Trotz and the Capitals in the second round in 2018. And from there, I don't really remember a deep playoff run. I could be wrong. Maybe there was one year in there, but it's been a while since they've knocked on the door. So he would have every right to say, I want to try something different. And the Penguins, to try to reboot, like to try to start a retool, rebuild, they might be within their rights to say, hey, Sid, you've done awesome for us. We're going to have the statue and all that stuff. Your number is going to be retired, but we got to trade you. We got to get assets for you. Because he's still one of the best. He's still one of the best players in the game. He had 40 goals last year. He was the lottery pick in 2005 during the lockout.
He's been there almost 20 years.
So I thought the other guy I thought of was LeBron. He's a couple years younger than LeBron, but it's a little bit of a similar type of value to the game. He has been a generational guy that was hyped up before he ever played a game, and he's lived up to the hype. Now LeBron has taken a different path, like from Cleveland out to Miami, back to Cleveland, now to LA. So he has gone a different route. But I don't know that this is the best thing. If you take the emotions out of it, I don't know if this is the best move for the Penguins or for Crosby, because in theory, if he re-ups for $10 million a year, they're probably going to be a fairly mediocre team the next few years. I don't know if they've got one more last hurrah in them.
I mean, it's hard to not want to pay a guy that has been with your organization his whole career. I don't know what
19 years.
He's 19 years, so
this will be his 20th year.
He's played over 1,200 games with Pittsburgh, I'm sure.
So 1,272.
So you're looking at him and you're thinking, okay, a guy that has been with this one organization his whole career, coming off of 40 goals. It's how do you approach him if indeed you do want to move in another direction?
Yeah, how would you even do that?
Yeah, because now not only does it seem like a little disrespect, like I've been here the whole time through the ups, through the downs. I've been the mainstay. I've been the constant for this organization, and y'all want to move on from me. So not only do you have to sort of
the Stamkos thing, right? Yeah. He was pretty open about that.
Exactly.
He was pissed.
So not only do you got to try to navigate that, but you got the fans that are like, this dude just came off 40 goals. How can you get rid of him? Like he is the franchise. How can you get rid of him? I can see if he had, 20 goals this season, then it would be better it's better to stomach, hey, we need to move on. We got to go in another direction. Let's try to, get you to another team, the team that you can feel comfortable with, that you can have the potential of winning the Stanley Cup with in your latter years. Let's try to navigate a move to send you to that team. That's better. You can swallow that a little bit better. And as a player, I can understand it. Like, yeah, I just came off a 20-goal season. I understand it. Maybe I'm getting a little bit long in the tooth. Maybe I'm wearing down a little bit. Just put me somewhere where I have a chance to win. It's easier to stomach that. It's easier to introduce that or to give that to your fans. But when he's come off of 40 goals and he still looks like one of the best players in hockey, how can you move on from him? You can't. Now, paying him $10 million, we would have to negotiate that, because if I'm keeping you for your 19th or 20th, this would be his 20th season.
Yeah. He's going to re-up. His age 37 season is coming. That's the last year of this deal. And then they're thinking about 3 more years, which would take him through age 40 at about $10 million per year.
My thing is, we would have to negotiate that $10 million, because if you want to go out a winner, we got to surround you with players. And maybe we can't surround you with the players we need if we're giving you $10 million. Listen, you've earned it. But how do you want to go out? Do you want to go out hanging on, or do you want to go out a champion? Which lane do you want to pick?
It has had, from afar, I have really raised my eyebrows about this, because they have really gotten, I think, emotionally sentimental and attached to these guys, because they haven't just done it with him. They've done it with Evgeny Malkin, another guy who's a year older than Crosby, but part of all 3 championship teams. Like Howgill's been out of the league for a while. He was on the team with Crosby and Malkin as young players in 2009 when they first won it. 2009 is we're getting a little pretty removed from there, but he's still there.
Oh,
Chris Letang, Marc-Andre Fleury, like these are all guys, but they have kept Letang and Malkin. They traded for Erik Karlsson last year, who's 34. So they've got an older team, and they're trying to sort of tread water and find a combination. And the thing about it is that keeps them coming back to the well is that Crosby keeps playing great. But despite him being one of the best players in the league still, it's just like LeBron. LeBron is still one of the better players in the league. He stayed productive. But each year that goes by, when you're sort of married to them, can you put together a roster that can win a championship? And if you're falling short, it's only going to make the rebuild and the aftermath of this player even tougher. So I don't know that this is a win-win, even though they're going to score points by him saying, I played for one team for my entire career. Now, maybe someday they could, a couple years in, a 39-year-old or a 40-year-old Crosby goes out and is rented like Wayne Gretzky. Like Gretzky played for a number of different teams at the very end of his career. After he was traded to the Kings from the Oilers, he went to the Blues and he went to the Rangers. So I worry. I wonder how this is going to play out. But if I'm in the Eastern Conference and I'm competing with the Penguins, I'm saying to myself, great, keep those guys as long as you want. You haven't been very good the last couple of years in this, and we can leapfrog you. We're gonna end up better than you.
Yeah, and they're just hoping that they can get, a few more good seasons out of all these individuals, and that the puck sort of bounce their way, as the season goes on, and these guys can stay healthy. I mean, there are a handful of teams in every sport that run into this. We saw the Tennessee Titans. You brought up Derrick Henry as you in the last segment, as you sort of
because I think the Titans, there were a lot of people that was pulling at their heartstrings. They wanted to. You can bring Derrick Henry back. Maybe they'll bring Derrick Henry back. But I think that they came to the point where, like, okay, we can't be emotional and too sentimental about this. We feel like this is the right time, and they did it, even though it was hard, right? It was hard for Derrick, and it was hard for
everybody involved, I'm pretty sure. But, as you were setting the table for, the Ovechkin, what we're going to talk about, you brought in
Ovechkin's another one that's still going, and the Capitals are trying to stay competitive around him.
They're keeping him. So I think some sports, it may be a little bit easier to move on from your sort of that guy that has been a staple for your organization for 10 years or plus. It's hard to move away from those guys in certain sports. I think in football, because of the way the salary cap is, I think it's easier for NFL teams to move away from that, from a Derrick Henry type of guy, or you see what they're doing with quarterbacks now. Quarterbacks are jumping from one team to the next. You never saw that, 10, 15 years ago. Teams look at it a little bit different in each individual sports. Maybe hockey look at it from the standpoint of, hey, listen, we truly value what an individual does for our organization. And if you've been here for a considerable amount of time and you're still playing good hockey, we're going to keep it. We're going to try to find a way to keep you. And in Pittsburgh's situation, you got a guy that has, from the day he stepped on ice, he's been that guy. So how do you go away from him, especially after coming off of scoring 40 goals? How do you then present it to your fan base that we're moving away from him? I don't think you can do it. It's almost like you are tied to him no matter what. Like, you can't get rid of him. Like, you got to allow him to go on his own. Like, he just want to retire. You can't sit and force a retirement or say we're not signing you back, because he's done so much for this organization. And not only would you be, sort of pissing off the player, the whole fan base is going to be looking at you a certain way.
That's what I wonder about the Pittsburgh fan base, is how do they feel about this? They probably have mixed feelings, because on one hand, they're so attached to Crosby. They were at the bottom when he came on. They were a bankrupt franchise. They hadn't won in a while, and he lifted them up, right? He was everything.
So how do you get rid of that?
But at the same time, if I'm watching, I'm like, they're not that good. And
Uh-huh.
how are they going to get better if they keep, you think the Predators have an older roster.
Uh-huh.
Like the nucleus of the Penguins roster is very young, and they've traded a lot of their prospects, traded a lot of their draft picks, and they don't have a replenishing kind of group of players coming up to play with Crosby. So it's a double whammy. So if I'm a fan, I'm like, oh, I love Sidney Crosby, but isn't it kind of time to turn the page? That's a tough one.
Yeah. How do you think the Red Wings would have felt if they would have got rid of Steve Yzerman?
That's a great question.
He was their team.
He was their team.
Mr. Red Wing.
Now, what the Red Wings had going for them back then is there was no salary cap. So they could keep him around.
Yes.
They didn't get themselves into that position because they could spend as much as they wanted to keep the team good and slide his role down a little bit and keep him on the team until he was able to retire. But I do think it would have been the very same thing. Is if they were in that position. I think they might have been faced with that.
Exactly.
Of moving on from the legend, right?
Yeah. So you have to be truly in situations like that. You have to be strategic and calculated how you do it, because if you do get rid of a guy like Crosby or one of these other guys that have been with organizations for so long, and you don't win that season that you move on from them, you know how much flack you're gonna catch, especially if that guy goes to another team and he's still playing well.
Honestly, I think the best move would be to play it out during the season, see how it goes, and then maybe dangle him at the trade deadline.
Not a bad
That
idea.
would be unbelievable if they did that, but it looks like they're going to re-up. All right, when we come back, we'll wrap up this hour. At 1:00, Alex Carrier is going to join us. Predators defenseman who decided to stay put. He's coming back to Nashville, and we will talk with him in the Predators offseason next here on 102.5 The Game. We're back here on 102.5 The Game. You're listening to Willy and DMase. Oh, yeah, a little Michael Jackson there.
Yeah. Hey, Willie, I was just, because I know we got a couple of minutes here before we get to Alex Carrier, which you need to listen to.
Oh,
I'm
yes.
He had to be a great interview. Got a lot of good questions to ask for of him. But Nick came in and he asked me about nutritionists. And did I have a nutritionist when I was playing? And I was like, no, I didn't, because we were talking about eating three times a day.
I'm glad you bring this up because there's an article about they had the players grade the cafeterias in the NFL facilities.
Yeah, and the Titans didn't get a good grade, I don't think.
But it wasn't as bad as the Bengals, who got an F-. Is there?
What do they not sell? They not give them lunch or anything?
Well, like, what's worse, getting an F- or just not having any food available in the facility and just say, y'all just go eat. We'll pay you to go eat somewhere.
I would say not having food, period.
It sounds like
F-.
Yeah, that's not good.
First off, how do you get a minus with an F?
Exactly.
2, was there even a lunchroom? I mean, it didn't sound like you had a lunchroom.
It's just like, how in the hell do you get
that
an F-?
What did the Titans get, by the way?
They
weren't in the top 5. Obviously,
like
weren't in the top 5, but they weren't in the bottom 6 or 7.
They wasn't. No.
I only saw the both bookends of it, so they're somewhere in the middle. I
think they were a C, of like a certain degree of C, like a C,
C minus, C plus, yeah.
Because I remember somebody talking about that previously.
Yeah, we were talking about that. It might have been at the beginning of last year, right around this time, when those sort of grades came out. It wasn't in the middle of the season, one of the two. But we were talking about eating and your aunt and uncle. They eat 3 times a day. And I'm thinking, man, I don't know too many people that eat 3 times a day. Now, I used to eat 3 times a day, but that's when I play, because I go in early enough. I get me some breakfast. We come back, we eat lunch, and then either I am eating at the facility late at night, or I go home and dinner's cooked. So we got into the nutritionist part. I didn't have a personal nutritionist. There was one at the facility. So, went to see that person, and whatever sort of regimen they gave you or meal plan they gave you, then I can then take that home and give it to Marcy when I was married. And if I needed something cooked off of that, she would prepare it and have it, ready for me. So I was like, man, that's why I need to get married again now. But then I said, nope, I'm not getting married just to have a meal on the table, people. Okay. That's not why I'm getting married. But I said, those are some of the perks that comes with it. Either you're cooking for them or she's cooking for you, and but you always have a good meal, at home, whether it be both of y'all prepared or she's preparing or you preparing it. So that's why I said maybe I need to get married again, because I don't cook as much as I need to, because it's just me.
Yeah.
Unless the kids are over, then I'm cooking for them.
I always want, this is something that every player has got to decide, and that is, how much do you invest in your own body with your own resources, right? Because the team is going to provide you meals, even though you have to sit there and go, F-. I'm better off going.
Yeah, I'm better off going to Burger King.
But even on top of all that, right? On top of all the things your team provides you, then there's probably an additional investment you decide to make with your off-season workouts, nutritionists, things that you want to invest in yourself, and obviously supplements and things like that hopefully do not trigger anything.
That's what
people have made a mistake of. I'm investing myself. I went to GNC, but whoops,
that's
I triggered
investing in yourself.
That's not good. But you know what I mean. Like some people who are like, man, I got to be tight with my money. I'll figure it out. Others like, no, I'm spending the extra money to make sure I'm getting the maximum out of my body while I'm a pro.
Yeah, and I get that part of why individuals do it, and you see a lot of guys that are, that don't have families. Some guys that do have families, they're doing it, but I look at a guy like Terrell Casey. His wife cooked a lot of meals for the guys, a lot of vegan meals, if I'm correct. If I'm not, please somebody correct me. But I'm sure it was Terrell Casey's wife that was cooking a lot of vegan meals for the guys, and they loved it. So you got someone in-house in Terrell Casey's situation, someone in-house that knows about different foods, that knows how different foods sort of react in your body. She's able to then cook it at home. So you don't need to go pay a nutritionist. Some guys, because they're single, they don't have somebody cook, so they got to go and pay a nutritionist. But listen, you got to understand, you're paying these people. You need to stick to what they're telling you, because it makes no sense for you to pay these people all the money that you're paying them, but yet and still running to Burger King, McDonald's, and all these other places and eating this crap food. You know, if you want to pay these people, because you're paying them a lot of money. This stuff is not cheap. You're paying them damn near close to six figures for the year. You know, so if they're giving you a meal plan, you need to stick to it, players. And I know a lot of guys are. So
it's a good topic. It's something that every athlete's got to, you know, make the decision on, because why wouldn't you? Like, you got to give yourself every chance to be as good a player for as long as you possibly can. And that's part of it now, especially with all the new studies. Like, there's things you can do that will make a difference. Right?
Oh, there are
the
a lot of things.
Nutrition, that stuff definitely counts.
Sleep, what you eat, what you don't drink, what you do drink, especially during the season.
It's okay to sneak a McFlurry in there, Oreo McFlurry.
I mean, you could treat yourself every once in a while, but don't, you know, every day you got that McFlurry in your hand when you walk.
If you hang around Nick too long, though, you'll be doing a lot of cheating. You'll be doing a lot of cheating.
There's some good meals.
He's going to be
getting
a lot of biscuits and things like that. You know, casseroles,
chicken cutlets.
Look at chicken cutlets.
I'm telling you,
if I
bought a Blackstone, y'all wouldn't see me for 8 weeks. I've been dying to get a Blackstone.
All right, when we come back, Alex Carrier is going to join us. He is just re-upped with the Nashville Predators, and we will talk with the Nashville defenseman here coming up next here on Willy and DMase. Welcome back to Willy and DMase here on 102.5 The Game. Great to be with you on this Tuesday afternoon. Willy Donick, and former Titan wide receiver Derek Mason here with you. And as we promised you earlier, we're going to catch up with Alex Carrier, Predators defenseman, who has re-upped with Nashville on a new deal to stay with the team. It was such an exciting July 1st. It was the day DMase came back from his long vacation in Europe, and then boom, you had this huge frenzy of free agency opening up with the Predators signing Steven Stamkos and Brady Shea and Jonathan Marchessault. And it was not as much of a headline, but on the same day, they announced that they had re-upped with Alex. So we're really excited that he's still in the fold. Alex is on the line with us here. Alex, first of all, congratulations on your new deal, and thanks for spending a few minutes with us today.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
So, Alex, first, what was it like when the floodgates opened on July 1st and you found out, hey, not only are you back, but you guys have got some reinforcements here. You guys went shopping here and added some really big names to the team. What was that like to experience?
Yeah, that was a crazy day. Obviously, we knew we were gonna have some guys, but I never expected to add so many quality guys like that. Just talking with the guys too on the team, with Roman, Jeremy, all Saros as well. All the guys were super excited, and it's fun. You know, you want to compete, you want to have a great team, and I'm excited for next year for sure.
So when did you know that you were coming back? Obviously, it wasn't announced until the day of free agency, but everybody was kind of wondering each day where your head was, and because you could have tested the market for sure. So when did you know you wanted to come back and stay with Nashville?
Oh, I knew I wanted to stay for a long time. We had discussion during the season. It didn't work out, and then we didn't make it to July. In Nashville, I know I'm happy here. I love the direction we're going. I love the coaching staff, the players. So I really wanted to come back. So yeah, we didn't make it to July 1st. We signed just a few days earlier. So I think it was a Saturday or something like that.
So you had it put to bed so you could sort of enjoy just sitting back and watching who Barry Trotz and the team was going to bring in. So that had to be a hilarious text line going back and forth amongst the players saying, oh my gosh, we got Stamkos. Oh my gosh, we got Marchessault. Like that had to be a frenzy.
Yeah, we had some good reaction for sure. But yeah, like you said, it was fun to sign before free agency. It was my first time becoming a free agent, so I didn't know exactly what to expect. But it was a very stressful situation, not knowing where you were gonna go, where I was gonna go, and stuff. So I'm glad we did it before July 1st because it was better to watch than being part of it almost.
Well, that's something that DMase and I talked about, that anybody that has the decision you had has probably got to weigh, right? You might have been able to make more money had you hit the free agent market, but you have the uncertainty of going on and not knowing exactly where you fit, even if you get a raise, basically. Whereas I'm sure sitting on the table, you had a deal to stay, knowing who your partner is going to be, knowing who the coach is going to be, and where you fit in the system. So what was that process like for you?
Yeah, that was a major thing for me. Obviously, like you said, I know what to expect. I know my role. I know my D partner, probably. So there was a lot, like, comfort-wise that I knew was going to be the same, but also it was more about happiness at the same time. Like, you could sign somewhere else, maybe make more money for more years, but at the end of the day, if you sign somewhere you don't want to go for more money, then it's not the same for me. For me, it was really to be happy and to be able to get to my full potential, and I know I can do that with the Preds, so I was really happy to be back.
We'll talk with Alex Carrier, Nashville Predators defenseman. Now, how was it for you, Alex, during the season? Because you said you guys couldn't get a deal done, worked out before the season, so you kind of put it to bed. But even though it's been put to bed, that's still something that athletes tend to think about throughout the season because you can't get away from it. You know, eventually you're going to have to confront, the whole contract situation. But how did you sort of put that behind you and still concentrate on the task at hand?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Especially the trade deadline week was probably the hardest mentally for me. I think throughout my whole career, just the fact that, you're seeing your name on rumors. You try to shut it down, but like you said, as athletes, it's impossible to do so. So for me, it was I work with a mental coach. We work about the hockey aspect, but also the off-ice aspect, obviously, and that made a huge part in my mental side of it, just to really be in the present and really enjoy, if it was my last week maybe or not, So it was really to be in the present and to enjoy it. Meditation and all that helped a lot for me.
Now, when did it come to a point for the team in general? Because you guys started off a little rough, and there was a bunch of panic around here in Predator world amongst the fans. But there was a point within the season where it just seemed like everything turned. Listen, I can go back to the Vegas thing, but I'm not going to do that because I wasn't in that locker room. But when did it turn for you guys? Maybe it turned even before the Vegas thing, as far from a mental thing, or it was some games after the Vegas whole trip that you guys finally realized it started picking up, on what coach was, trying to teach and what he wanted to convey to y'all.
Yeah, I think it started before the Vegas trip. Obviously, after Vegas, we went on that run, but earlier before that, the week before, we knew we were starting to get better. We were starting to be on the same page. We could see as a team that we were doing better. Like you said, the coach was teaching us things that we were finally getting. You need you got 6 guys on the ice every time, so you need the 6 guys to be on the same page. And it took a little bit, but we could see the progress of it. And then just that trip that got canceled, I think it was more about the slap in the face, and we're like, okay, we got really great player in this room. We know we're getting better. Let's show the whole league that we're that type of team. So it was a lot of leadership in our room that stepped up, and just guys that are pride about their pride. They're proud about the team, the city, and we wanted to make an impact, and we did.
Now, once the season was done and y'all fought a hard-fought battle, that first round of Vancouver, ultimately losing, but that was such a competitive series that it could have went either way. What was the mentality, or what was sort of the ending thought of that team once everything was over? Once y'all came back here to Nashville and y'all had y'all meetings, what was sort of the thought of the team moving forward?
Yeah, obviously it was a huge disappointment. We thought we had a better team, and we thought we deserved better. Obviously they worked hard too, and it went their way. But I think the whole thing after was, how do we get better from there? It's a good thing to make the playoffs. I don't think a lot of teams saw us there. But at the same time, when you don't win a series, then it doesn't matter. So for us, it was really to find a way how to get better. So every guy got a plan. If I speak for myself, I got a plan the off season that I work on, and just to be as much ready as I can for next year and to have a bigger impact on the team.
Now, in professional sports, Alex, we talk a lot about transparency, being upfront, being honest. Since Barry has taken over as GM, that's just what he has been: honest, upfront. He's not scared to say some of the things that other GMs won't say. How does that resonate with the team?
Yeah, you love that as a player. You rather have the right facts than somebody that tells you something that's not true, right? So as a player, I think it comes from his coaching side as well. You tell the players or the fans or whoever not what they want to hear, but what's the facts. And as a player, you really appreciate it.
We're talking to Alex Carrier, who has re-upped with the Predators, a new 3-year contract to keep him in Nashville. Alex, I'm curious the perspective of Jeremy Lauzon throughout the process, because I'm thinking now in a couple of years, you might be on the other side of this trying to get him to stay if it continues to work the way it's working between you guys. It's easy to see the chemistry you guys have on the ice. You guys are obviously very close off the ice. Your inner circles are close. So how did he try to handle it? Was he lobbying you? Hey, anything news today, Alex? Are you staying? What did he kind of sit back and just let the process play out?
Yeah, that's funny because, like you said, we're really close. So we were on the phone, texting, calling each other a lot. He understood the business part of it. He knew I was gonna do what's best for me, but at the same time, he he really wanted me to stay, and so did I. So it was actually his bachelor trip party. He's getting married this summer as well. So when I signed, it was his bachelor trip, and I didn't make it there because I was like, man, I can't go there during negotiation and stuff. You know, I gotta have my mind right and stuff. So I didn't make it there. I was disappointed, but I think it was the best news I could give it to him.
Okay, so it has to come back around. There might have to be an extra event to celebrate all this stuff.
Absolutely.
Since you missed the last one.
We'll find it. We'll find a way.
Well, another thing that I think is always fun is when somebody's drafted by a franchise and you took a longer path. It's not like you were handed anything. You had to spend a lot of time in Milwaukee for extra season. You had to fight your way up the ladder to get to this point. It's got to be pretty satisfying to you to go through that whole process and know that you're going to be taken care of for the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of hard work, but I think that's my personality as well. You know, just growing up, I was always smaller, on the smaller side, you know, under 6 foot in the NHL. People are like, oh, he's not fast enough. He's not big enough. He's not strong enough. And I think it kind of made it better at the same time because I really worked for it, and I'm glad it did. I'm glad for my family as well. But everything together, it was great to re-sign. But like I said, I think it's part of my DNA to just trying to get better every year. And I'm glad it's a 3-year deal, so I don't get comfortable. You know, I still want to improve and sign another one after that. So it's really exciting.
Now, one of the things that I thought about was when you were coming up and starting to make your mark for the Predators, it was during the season that you guys were in the same division as the Lightning. And so I'm thinking you probably had some assignments against Steven Stamkos a few times that season. Just maybe tell our fans what it's like to try to defend a guy who shoots the way he does. Like he's just such an accomplished guy, 555 goals in his career, but a unique player like that. What was it like to defend him, and how excited are you to have him on your side?
Yeah, super excited. Obviously, he's going to be a Hall of Famer one day, you know, so it's always special to have a player like this in our room and a leader like this as well. Playing against him, it's you always got to have an eye on him in the when you're in the D zone, because a shooter like that can score from anywhere. So you give him half a second, it's off his stick and it's in the back of the net, you know. So you always got to be careful with him around. So I'm glad I'm not playing against him anymore, for sure.
What about Marchessault? How does he get it done out there? Like for maybe people that haven't focused on him, he's obviously a great player that's done a lot in his career. What type of player is he?
Yeah, another French Canadian on the squad. So
I thought you might give him a shout out for that. I thought you might shout him out for that.
Yeah, I think Marchessault is just a smart player. He's a gamer as well, competitive. You know, a really smart player. He can make plays. A good stick, good shooter as well. I think he's overall a great player. But you can see a few years back when they won the cup with Vegas, you got the MVP that playoff run. So I think that tells you how much of a gamer he is, and you always want guys like this on your team.
All right, I got to ask this, Alex, because it's like the running joke, right? You look a little bit like UC Saros. You guys have been mistaken for one another before. You both signed new deals. Now, have you been congratulated by anybody who thinks that you're Juice, or vice versa?
Yeah, that's funny, because when he signed his deal, I texted him, the Twins are back. Yeah, I didn't get no text from anybody that thought I was Juice. It's really in person that we get confused a lot when we wear the same hat and stuff. So we got the same haircut from behind. We look alike a lot, but no, I didn't get that though.
Okay, so we're going to put this to test at Brent Peterson's Golf Classic. When you guys come in with the hats on, we'll see if anybody gets you guys mixed up.
Absolutely, let's try it.
It's usually a pretty good bet. That's for sure. Alex, congratulations. I know this has been awesome for a lot of the fans here to be able to know that you're coming back, and I know you're happy for what the future holds, and really excited about the upcoming season. I'm sure you guys really have great expectations now of what you guys could do. It's exciting.
Yeah, super exciting. I think the motivation went through the roof after July 1st, just because you want to get ready for camp. You want to be on top of your game. And yeah, it's super exciting. Obviously, expectations are going to be different than they were last year. But as a player, as an athlete, you embrace those because you want to get better. You want to perform. And yeah, exactly. You want to be on top of your game for the big moment.
Yeah, it's going to be good stuff. So can't wait to see you back in Nashville in a couple months. Enjoy your time off, Alex, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot for joining with us. That's Alex Carrier, Predators defenseman, 3-year deal to stay in Nashville. Great talker, just a fun guy to be around. He's a guy that energizes locker rooms. Like he said, he's not the biggest guy, but he's able to defend very well against bigger players, despite not being the biggest guy himself. And that's why I think he meshes well with Lazan, who does have a little more size and physicality. So the two of them together seem to fit very well.
Yeah, it's not the size of the dog, is it?
That's right. That's right.
It's not the size of the dog. And in Alex Carrier's, situation, it rings true because I don't think he plays his size. I think he plays bigger than what he actually is. But it was interesting to hear him talk about, because that season can welcome a lot of distractions.
Yeah. And he said he was pretty open when you asked him about that. I was
about
interested to hear that. He said he actually talked to a lot of sports psychology people to try to, get through that, deal with that.
Yeah, because you can almost play yourself out of what is meant for you because you're worried about things not happening in your time or the way you think they should happen. He could have easily, because the contract didn't get done prior to the season, he could have easily just went to a shell, especially, he talked about it, the trade deadline. Now you're extra anxious. You're worried because your name is floating around, being traded to other teams. So not only are you thinking about that, you're thinking about your job. Like, I got to go play, so all of that goes into an individual's mind when you're entering the last year of your contract and you were not able to get a deal done before that season began. And it was just interesting to hear him talk about, hey, listen, I had to sit down with, a therapist, and we had to really sort of talk through some things, whether it be off ice or on ice, because I know how frustrating or how anxious you can become. You have a bad game. After the game, you're thinking about it, like, dang it, man, are they going to resign me? What's going on here? I need to play better. So you might try to, you're reaching the next game, or you're trying to do something that is sort of outside of your ability to do, and you end up messing up everything else. So it was good to hear him sort of go through that answer of what I did this season when I knew the contract was sort of looming over me.
Yeah, and he's not going to be, as we talked about at the top, he won't be the overpaid guy in a new place that maybe brings on a new challenge of mental toughness. Now, I think you can sort of put all that. He knows where he fits, and he knows he's on a team that's got a lot of layers and ways to win. Speaking of that, when we come back, we'll look at where things stand now. The Athletic did an interesting piece where they asked all of the writers that cover the teams, the 32 teams, what is the biggest hole right now in the post free agency. There's still some guys out there. For example, Kevin Lankinen hasn't signed with anybody yet. I'm surprised at that. So there's still some free agents out there. There will be some bargain shopping going on. But as it stands now, what is the biggest question mark with the Predators roster? Joe Rexroad took his swing at it in the Athletic. We'll talk about that, and we'll see if we agree. What else do we add? What's the biggest question mark for the Predators as they head into the season next year? We'll tackle that next here on 102.5 The Game. look a little bit like UC Saros. You guys have been mistaken for one another before. You both signed new deals. Now, have you been congratulated by anybody who thinks that you're Juice or vice versa?
Yeah, that's funny because when he signed his deal, I texted him, the Twins are back.
The Twins are back. Both UC Saros now, Alex Carrier signing new deals with the Predators. They do kind of look alike. Now, when you really look at them, you're like, wait a minute, why did I get bit? But it has even happened to me. And my wife, Erin, almost killed me at the Brent Peterson PD's party.
You paused there, Will. You kind of scared me. What'd she do to you?
Well, from a distance, I saw it. Now,
She tried to hit you with the car or something? What'd you do?
Get
Willie?
a 7-iron out? What happened?
Aaron, this was not at the golf, but this was at the dinner the night before the golf. It's kind of the go back to school. You see everybody. You haven't seen them since last season in most cases. And there's a wide open seating. It's a great event, and it'll be happening again. If you want to come to it, I highly recommend. You'd be donating to a great cause. It's always a fun night. And you have access to the players. You can walk up to them, say hello and everything. And so it's on the playing surface. It's really spread out. So Erin, she has met UC Saros a few times, really enjoyed talking to him. There was an event a few years ago. They got put together in the same little group, so they were talking a lot. So she wanted to go up and say hi. And from a distance, I see Alex Carrier, but I thought it was Juice.
Oh.
So I made the mistake, and I was like, oh, Erin, there's UC. You want to go say hi to him? And so she marches right up to him. But she thinks it's UC.
Yeah, I'd have been mad at you too. I'd have took a 7-iron to you too.
I know. So she was not happy because I led her down the path.
Exactly.
And then I'm like, oh, I was like, hey, Alex. And he's like, don't worry. It happens a lot. It happens. And I've seen it on the other side where UC is mistaken for Alex.
Or Alex, okay.
So
if I was Aaron, I'd be like, that guy over there behind
that guy told me who you were.
His fault.
It's that guy.
That was it. So I always get a kick out of it because I it's one of those things when you've made the mistake, you look around to see if other people have made the same mistake, so you don't feel quite as bad. So it is funny that he did that. So having him back, it answers one of the questions that we were looking for where does this team go from here with the new guys. And so the Athletic has put together a question for each team. What is still lingering after you have a chance to address the roster at the draft and free agency? So Joe Rexroad was the one that was tasked with the Predators, and he said the Predators still aren't where they want to be down the middle, though Steven Stamkos certainly could end up centering a line. How about Philip Forsberg and Jonathan Marchessault on the wings with him, while Ryan O'Reilly works with Gus Nyquist and Luke Evangelista? The possibilities are exciting, and Tommy Novak could figure into a top 2 center role. Still, you'd like to see another answer at center, and that won't arrive before the season does. And now, they really, at this moment, don't have any cap space to play with. So it's not like they can make another addition without subtracting somebody. So they have the same centers as they did last year. And unless you believe that Steven Stamkos is going to play some center, which he really, as he's aged a little bit, he has not played center as much. He can still take the faceoffs and always has, but with the Lightning, he has played more often on the wing. And I think going forward, that's probably where I see him. So I think it's probably a good issue that Joe brought up here.
Yeah, I'm looking at it, and because I just refreshed what they predict the lines will be for the 24-25 season when it comes to the Nashville Predators. And that second line, obviously the first line is intact with Philip Forsberg, Ryan O'Reilly, and Nyquist. And then you go to your defensive pairs. They got Brady Shea and Roman Josi paired together. Now you got a left with a right-handed shot. Is it a left-handed shot with a right-handed shot?
Yeah, well, that's what you want ideally. And that's why Carrier and Lauzon fit well.
Exactly.
Because Carrier's righty, Lauzon's lefty. It's easier to find left shot defensemen than it is right shot. It's almost like left-handed pitchers are a little harder to find.
Yeah.
But that's the issue with Josi and Shea, which to me would have been the other thing that Joe could have chosen if he didn't elect to go with center depth for the one issue, because the other issue is who is going to play with Roman Yossi. It's because Brady Shea is a great defenseman, and they're paying him to be a great defenseman, but he is a left shot. So you would have two lefties on the ice at the same time if you played Shea and Yossi together. So we'll have to see if that fits. Yossi can move over to the other side. He did a lot when he played last year with Ryan McDonough, who's also a lefty. And you can do what you did last year and have Dante Fabro sort of mix in. They sort of had a mix. It may not be the perfect scenario, but with a guy like Roman Yossi, he can literally probably play with anybody and make them better. But I do think that's a question that they'll be trying to sort out, just like they're trying to sort out the center situation. I heard Andrew Burnett with Jared right after this frenzy hit, and everything was settling after the big splurge on July 1st. He said probably his mindset as of the summer, and he said he's going to be sorting this out in his mind for the next few months before training camp starts. He said, I'm inclined to stay with O'Reilly centering Forsberg and Nyquist, and then try to figure out how to use Marchessault and Stamkos. I wouldn't rule out over the course of the year, stuff evolves, and you might eventually find that it's better to break up Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Nyquist. That could be the case. But I think the first thing you got to ask is Stamkos a center? I'm going to say no, and that's where I think with Joe, I think they would like to see what Novak could do with Stamkos and or Marchessault
when he's flanked by those two guys.
Yeah,
and
those guys are
elevate.
shooters.
Yeah, his
those guys
game
are
may
shooters.
elevate.
Yeah.
But from what I gather and from what you've explained to me, Willie, it's not so much of the offensive end of the ice. It's more so the defensive end of the ice where Tommy Novak is sort of put in this predicament where he may not measure up the way he needs to. On the offensive end, yes, but on the defensive end, he's more of a liability in a sense. Now, how do they find the perfect combination? That's why, each time we talk about the Nashville Predators in their upcoming season, always, putting that caveat, hey, listen, we got to make sure that we understand it's going to take some time for this team to mesh and gel. You may be having to move around some lines to get the perfect chemistry, whatever. You got chemistry with Lazan and Carrier. You got chemistry, with that first line with Forsberg and Nyquist and O'Reilly. You got chemistry right there. Now we got to try to build chemistry with the other guys. Let's leave Tommy Novak in there for now as a center. He may, because you're not flanking him with two extremely, gifted goal scorers, maybe his game elevates.
Yeah. The motto of Andrew Burnett. He thinks the best defense is really offense, that you have the puck. If you have the puck, the other team isn't scoring, and the puck is a long way from your net. So I think none of those three guys, Marchessault, Stamkos, and Novak, will win any defensive awards anytime soon. But if they are scoring and putting that pressure on the opposition and taking pressure off O'Reilly, Nyquist, and Forsberg, they're going to do the job there. I think that could work. The other thing that I like about that is Stamkos is still a guy that can take and win faceoffs. And so that could relieve. So
you can also put him in that role.
Yeah, and even have Novak slide over and not take the faceoffs. That happened because Novak is not a great faceoff guy. So that can put you in trouble if he's taking a big faceoff. He's trying to improve in that area, but in the playoffs, I do think that was exploited a little bit. But having Stamkos alongside of him, that could take some pressure off because he does have some of that center skill set. So maybe that can work. Another guy that I'm really curious about, because let's be honest, when they had the breakdown of Canucks versus Predators in that first round, one of the things everybody gravitated to was, well, the Canucks have the advantage down the middle, right? They have better centers. And that was probably the case, I think, during the course of the series. And Nashville's coming back with the same centers, even though they've really upgraded at wing with Marchessault and Stamkos. So what about the growth of Juuso Parssinen? That's another option that I think could hit. Parssinen, I think, has an underrated playmaking ability. He's a good passer. Maybe he could be the answer because he's a little bigger, stronger, more responsible defensively than Novak. So that is an option there. And then there's the, of course, security blanket and Colton Sissons, who can always go in there and play, even though he's maybe not quite the skilled offensive player that Stamkos and Marchessault would be used to playing with. But he's a smart enough player that I think you could put him in there and still get some things done if all else fails. So those are some options, and they still have Cody Glass, which I'm still wondering what they're going to do with as they're right up against the cap. He does seem like the guy that I don't hear them talking about in the plans. That could be a salary that they end up moving. I don't know, but stranger things have happened. Maybe Cody Glass comes in and has a great training camp, and they're like, wow, he's really meshing well with Stamkos. Like, he's capable, we know, of playing really well. It just didn't happen for him last year. So they have some options there, but I do think it's going to be a question is, can they have the centers get the most out of these new wings that they've picked up, Marchessault and Stamkos? Who is the right guy? Fair question.
Yeah, it's going to be a fair question. How do you put together, these lines and try to get the best out of each individual player? So, right now, you're not on ice. You can kind of mess with some things in your mind.
Oh,
but
yeah.
then once you get to training camp, even though training camp isn't long, once you get into training camp, you can start tinkering with it a little bit more. And then you hopefully, by the time training camp is done, you in your mind have a good idea of what each line looks like and how each individual player is going to help the other player on that particular line. And then if you have to, once you get in the season, if you have to move some things around, you are afforded to do that because you have enough good pieces that you can sort of move around and try to figure out a pairing. Again, that's why I go back to, hey, the beginning of the season might be sort of a work
Experiment,
in progress. Yeah, experiment. But hopefully they're not experimenting and it's not a work in progress for too long. Hopefully they can figure it out. You got your first line. It's the second, third lines that you're trying to figure out in the last line.
So to me, Juuso Parssinen is a guy that during training camp is going to get a look along with Novak. Those are two guys that I would be focusing on. Willy and DMase is brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 and up and in Tennessee to bet. When we come back, we've got a Nick Frazier topic, a bold prediction for this coming football season. He believes that Tajay Spears is going to break out and have a great season. And wouldn't that be great if somebody has a breakout year for the Titans? I like what I see from Spears. I want to hear the argument from Nick, but one of the big things for the Titans will be, with Derrick Henry gone, what kind of production are we going to see at the running back position? So we're going to tackle that as we yo-yo back over to football for the final segment of the show here on 102.5 The Game. Dramatic pause. And now we have music. Okay, good.
I had to get back in my seat, Willie. Sorry about that.
Nick Frazier is just trying to build the drama because he's going to take center stage on this. He's going to bounce one off DMase and I. A bold prediction. We got thinking about this as a fun summer topic because we mentioned it yesterday. The MMQB put 100 predictions that were bold for the upcoming NFL season. Some are kind of far out, just kind of funny. Connor Orr puts it together every year. It's good stuff. So we wanted to come up with our own, and Nick has got one, right? He is coming strong to the table, and he says that Tajay Spears is going to have a breakout sophomore season. So, Nick, the floor is yours. Make the case.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Willie and DMase. I do think Tajay Spears will have a breakout sophomore season. I mean, everywhere he's gone, especially at Tulane, when he got the starting job his second year, he ended up being that main role guy. And I think when you bring in this modern day of the NFL where you're going a two-back set, I don't think Tony Pollard's going to be taking a lot of the extra weight on the shoulders like Derrick Henry had. And I think with, the first season with Tajay Spears had, I think, 485 yards rushing or 453, excuse me. And when you have that amount of yards as a rookie and you're getting about 100 carries, I mean, that's pretty good numbers. Now imagine if you had 200 carries, maybe 800 yards. But you also got to look at the all-purpose yards. In this style of offense with Brian Callahan, it's going to come down to all-purpose yards. And luckily for myself, I have this stathead.com, which is great if you want to use comparison numbers. Tajay Spears was available in all 17 games for the Titans, and I compared it to all the other starting running backs in the AFC South: Jonathan Taylor, Travis Etienne, and Joe Mixon. So obviously Joe Mixon last year played for the Bengals under Brian Callahan, so you're going to get some similar numbers there potentially with this comparison. But looking at all the green stat lines here, Tajay Spears led all of them with rush yards attempt at 4.5, and you have obviously Jonathan Taylor right behind him at 4.4. Trying to look too much into the numbers here, but those are two things that I kind of stick out to me is the amount of games that you're available for and the amount of rush yards. Because when you have the attempt of rush yards, it could also mean all purpose as well on this stathead.com. And so if you're going to be looking at, all purpose yards, which is what I'm kind of emphasizing here, then you look at Tony Pollard. I think it'll be more the ground and pound type game. And plus another reason why I think Tajay Spears will have a breakout season is they'll use him in the red zone. I think they'll use him for more of a 5 yards and in punch in type game, just because I think he's got more youth upside and there's a lot more, I guess. I don't know how to put it. I don't want to use myself for this example, but I will. When I was in high school, a lot of the coaches would use my size to advantage for defenses because I was smaller. I was able to shift into a lot of A gaps and B gaps. And so when you're 5 yards and in, use a running back that size, you get into the goal line for a touchdown. So that's kind of something, because my personal prediction is I think Tajay Spears will lead the AFC South in touchdowns for running backs.
Touchdowns.
Not rushing, just overall touchdowns. Okay.
Rushing and receiving.
But that is music to my ears. That'd be great for the Titans. So 100 carries and 52 catches in his rookie year as sort of the complimentary back. And so, DMase, when you hear a prediction like that, of a breakout where he becomes, it sounds to me in his plans, he's going to become more of the featured back and Pollard will be sort of the complimentary back. Do you think that's possible?
I think it is. I think what Tajay Spears brings to the table, they don't have in any other back. The combination of the ability to run between the tackles, run outside, but then also the ability to catch the ball the way he does out the backfield. You can put him in the slot. He can run angle routes. He can run out routes. He can run corner routes. That was the hole in Derrick Henry's game, was that you couldn't put him out on particular pass routes because more times than not, it's not going to work the way you want it. You couldn't run him on angle routes. You couldn't run him on out routes or option routes. Tajay Spears is a guy that you can do that with. And, with how it seems Brian Callahan wants to run his offense, I think it's going to be incumbent on the quarterback to make sure that he takes full advantage of the things that Tajay Spears can do, because those are the easy throws that you can make. The easy throws are the tight end throws, or because they're inside the numbers, or say the slot guy, but more importantly, the running back, because a lot of his stuff is coming out the backfield, 2 yards out the backfield, 2-3 yards, easy throws, and then he gets up the field. Those are going to be the throws that they rely on heavy, moving the chains. Is that whether it be a swing pass, whether it be an angle, whether it be an out to those running backs, and he's gonna be a matchup problem, I believe. Not to say that Tony Pollard wouldn't be, but I just think, like you said, youth is in his corner, meaning Tajay Spears. He can do some of those things that Tony Pollard probably can't do. So you're going to lean on him heavy. You saw what Mixon was able to do in Cincinnati under that system, catch passes out the backfield, run between the tackles. Tajay Spears isn't as big as Mixon, but he still can do the things that you were asking Mixon to do within his offense.
Thank you for bringing that up before we get to Willie.
Mhm.
I meant to say this earlier, but Tajay Spears' receiving yards, along with Joe Mixon's receiving stats, both have 52 exact receptions of last season. 385 yards for Tajay Spears, 376 for Joe Mixon, and then 7.4 yards per catch and 7.2 for Mixon.
So similar stuff.
Almost identical.
Here's what I would see in my crystal ball of what I would hope would happen in a best case scenario. We've seen with Pollard in his career with the Cowboys, when he was sort of the complimentary guy to Ezekiel Elliott, his numbers were really efficient. They dropped off some. He was banged up. When he became more of the main man, he maybe wasn't quite as efficient. A couple of years ago, he had great numbers. If he can rebound, then I think they can get a good year out of Pollard. But in a best case scenario, I'm with you guys. The younger legs of Spears, I'm hoping that there is a breakout, and that makes him a perfect complement. Because the issue is they both can catch the ball out of the backfield. They both can run the ball. They're going to have to see how the styles fit. But the 50-50 kind of thing, I don't know if that's ideal. I would love for Spears to be a little bit more of the 60-40 in a tandem. He flashed enough for me that I think that could be in him. If he can take the workload, I think he's got that explosiveness. He's got that make you miss. I think he can be very, very good if given the chance. What I would like to see, I look at the receiving yards, those 52 catches. His success rate is a little low, 34%. There were a lot of catches that he had that didn't go anywhere. If you catch it for 1 yard, that doesn't really get you very often. The success is deemed of if it's 1st and 10 and you get 50% of the yards, so 5 yards would be a success, 5 or more. On 2nd down, it's also 50% of the remaining yards. So if it's 2nd and 8 and you get 4 yards, doesn't sound like much, but that is borderline successful. And on 3rd down, whether it's 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 8, you got to get the 1st down for it to be successful. I thought there were too many catches that didn't go anywhere, but I also think of this. There were 3 or 4 plays last year where he is open, he's down the field, and for one reason or another, maybe he wasn't quite tall enough, the throw was a little bit off, or maybe he could have caught it, didn't quite get it, but he was open. Like I think there were like 3 or 4 times where I'm thinking big play touchdown possibility, and it didn't click. If a couple of those go his way, that would go a long way, I think, for him to become next level kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there was one the very first week against the Saints. Remember that?
Wide open. Yeah, wide open, just missed them.
Yeah, they missed him.
So this gives him, because we look at the numbers and you want to compare them to Mixon's numbers. Why? Because they were under the same, he's under that philosophy.
Yeah, same
Mixon
type of offense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mixon was under last year. But I would say it should be even more successful. Why? Because the system that Tajay Spears played in last year, he was a rookie, still trying to figure everything out. And I don't think they used him, at least in the first half of the season, they used him the way they probably could have. They could have probably used him a little bit more, but I know how it is with coaches sometimes. When you have a young player, you don't want to throw too much on them. I think this second season, that's why I do agree with you as far as a breakout year. Tajay Spears should be one of those guys. Why? Now, because you're bringing in a new offensive system, a guy that's 2nd year, so he understands what the NFL is about. They're going to use him in this offense. the way they use Mixon, and they might even use him a little bit more. Because Mixon was getting on the latter part of his careers.
Right.
He had already been injured and everything else. So there was only so much you wanted to put on Mixon. You wanted to have him for the playoff, if indeed they made it to the playoffs. Tajay Spears is a little bit different. You can work him. You can use him a little bit more. You can design things for him a little bit more early on. The Titans didn't do that last year. I understand why, but I think this year there's going to be a concerted effort to make sure he has the ball in his hands, because to me, he's one of those guys. Just put the ball in his hands and then allow him to work.
He has, I think, the ability to give them what the offense doesn't have a lot of, and that's explosive play capability. We talked about Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins at the stage of his career that he's in, not knowing what you're going to get from Burks, really, but Spears is a guy that can take a little swing pass and all of a sudden you got a 25, 30-yard gain. He can make somebody miss. I think using that ingredient will be what incentivizes them to have him on the field more. I think he's got a little bit more of that than Pollard does at this stage of his career. So I think there's opportunities there.
There's a point you
Spears.
made real quick, Willie, about in the red zone. You said about 4 to 5 yards on a swing route. I've been thinking about this a lot. You go a 2 running back set in, shotgun formation, Pollard on one side, Spears on the other. Do a read option, little bubble pass out. There goes your touchdown.
Yeah, I'm curious how much they set things up around what he can do. That'll be something to watch for sure. All right, that'll do it for us and our show. We'll have more of this tomorrow. We've got Jill Jelnick and Joe Dubin as the dynamic duo for this afternoon, Stillman and Company. So keep it right here on 102.5 The Game. DMase and I are back with you tomorrow at 11.
Be love and love of your people. Happy Tuesday and peace.